could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It is coming up to 6 o'clock on this Tuesday morning, the 5th of March.
You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster, and you're very welcome.
Headlines this morning, as the Conservatives face a fresh Rwanda defeat in the House of Lords and a new poll humiliation, will Jeremy Hunt's budget turn it around?
Super Tuesday, it is the biggest day of the primary calendar in the race to the White House, but will Trump finally clinch the nomination, or could Nikki Haley make some surprises?
A new season of Celebrity Big Brother. Could the Princess of Wales's uncle spill the beans about her health condition?
And later on at 7:20, amid a shocking rise in shoplifting across the UK, we'll be debating whether it's ever justifiable.
And in sport this morning, Arsenal score 6 against Sheffield United, but you know what? It could have been a lot more than that. More Formula One controversy, and in snooker, John Higgins misses out on the magic 167 break with the golden ball.
Finally, a drier week of weather to come, although still some rain to talk about in the forecast. Coming up, all the details very soon.
Very nice to have your company this morning. The top story on this Tuesday morning is we're one day out from the Chancellor handing down his spring budget, where rejuvenating the economy and addressing the cost of living will be front and centre.
Politically, though, there is pressure to try and turn the tide in the polls as the Conservative support has fallen to its lowest level on record, according to a new humiliating Ipsos poll.
And to top it off, overnight the government has suffered a string of defeats in the House of Lords to its immigration policy, the Rwanda bill.
So ahead of the budget tomorrow, we've taken to the streets of Cottingham in East Yorkshire, as well as Glasgow in Scotland, to see what you want to see from the Chancellor.
I'd like to see him listen to the people as well, for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
No increase on petrol is a big one, because I live in rural Lincolnshire and I use my car a lot.
They can start by spending it on helping homelessness.
Reduce the taxes and try to support the people to open new businesses.
A more generous housing market would be great. That would be lovely.
Like healthcare as well. Raise your tax allowance, because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
Well, who knows what we'll get, but here to talk to us now, former Chief of Staff to Nadeem Zahawi. We say good morning to James Price. James, well, if leaks or anything to go by, we're all a bit underwhelmed with and not expecting too much from Jeremy Hunt. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that what this probably says is the election isn't going to be in May. Maybe some of us who maybe just want to put ourselves out of our misery will be disappointed there. I think it means it will go longer. I think it means that the Conservatives will be keeping their powder dry, to use a tortured metaphor this early. And I suspect there may be some kind of one last budget just before the election in which the government really says, look, here are all the things we'll definitely do if you give us another term.
Oh, if I had £1 for every time I heard that. One more fiscal event
debt, wouldn't we?
Just before the next election. Look, they keep delaying, don't they, announcing this election because they keep hoping things are going to get better and things just aren't where they want them to be. If they take that risk, they delay it for the summer, they risk more of these illegal crossings across the Channel, which really upsets people. We saw that the cut in the autumn statement to income tax didn't really move the dial in the polls. The same could happen for many cuts that we see being announced tomorrow. Every day is a gamble for this administration.
I think that's true to an extent, but again, gambles can also go right, can't they? So I think that the polls there, and you referenced a not terribly good poll for the Conservatives, I think that they won't change very much at all until and unless an election is actually called. I think when that happens, people will switch back on again. You know, this has been a long Parliament, right? I think all the way back when it was about getting Brexit done, and then we went through COVID, and we've been through all these other things since Ukraine. Goodness knows what else I've forgotten in these past couple of years.
Right. So if you were Chancellor, what would you be doing? What would you like to see in there to just zoop all of this up?
So I think I'd like to hear a lot of what has just been said there by the people out on the streets. You know, someone there talking about council tax. Well, you hate council tax so much because you pay it like you pay other bills. It doesn't come out of your pay packet the way that lots of other taxes do. And so when people say, oh, I want money being spent on services, not just on tax cuts, they don't take into account that what that will actually mean is more money in their pockets. So I think that tax cuts are, as long as you can say how they're going to be paid for, are something we should definitely be looking at, because that helps with the cost of living. It's a massive burden on people, especially for the poorest people in this country. They pay the highest in their incomes in taxes. And I think the other thing you could then do is to get the Treasury boffins to look at, instead of saying that tax cuts are going to cost money, you look and see what kind of economic activity they generate. If businesses and families and individuals are left with more money in their pockets, that really helps the economy as it helps them go as well. I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, although all the boffins tell us that where we see these possible cuts in tax, we're just going to see rises in other places. And now we've seen a think tank, respected Institute for Fiscal Studies, saying that if they adopt this Labour policy to scrap the non-dom status in this country, you'll see a mass exodus, which I've been saying to Labour for months, of the super wealthy from this country. So they're not even able to exploit that opportunity. There's not many levers left to pull.
No, well, on that specifically, I completely agree. It's really frustrating, right? It's an easy thing to bash super rich people. And some of them that hide their money, for sure, that's terrible. But most of those people will spend money, again, in the economy that helps the economy grow.
Still pay tax on what they earn in this country.
Exactly right. And then the money they've got, they invest really well. And that's what pays for our schools and our hospital, right? As Margaret Thatcher said, pennies don't just fall from heaven, they have to be earned here on earth. But I think it's really important that instead of just trying to play this kind of accountancy, jiggery-pokery, you get the people in the Treasury to go, if we cut tax by this much, what does that money go and do? It can either be spent by the government or it can be spent by families and by businesses and by individuals. And I think that people tend to spend their money better than the government can. You've only got to look at all the waste inside government to see that.
Yeah.
But we saw, I mean, a lot of speculation yesterday about people spending money and who's going to be penalised as a result of that. So business class tickets on airplanes, for instance.
Second homeowners.
Yeah. So the idea is that, you know, anybody with anything extra in their pockets, they're going to be hit.
Yeah, and I think that's concerning as well, but that's just a little foretaste of what I suspect will be to come if and when Labour actually get in. Right, the idea of the Conservatives doing this is to take one of Labour's only two, I think, remaining policies they've actually announced, to take that away from them. So politically it might work. But again, and it's an easy thing to bash people who take business class flights. I mean, I'd love to be able to afford a business class flight one day. I've never been on one. But the people that do that are people that bring in huge amounts of money. They're all net taxpayers. They bring their business here. And if we start penalising them and making the UK a worse place place for them to live and to set their businesses and their families, they'll go somewhere else. Emmanuel Macron will go along and glad hand them, or someone in Italy will, or the Americans will, or
just like
Dubai,
we did when the French
else.
evicted them.
Right, exactly.
I just want to say the idea of a life of Ryanair or EasyJet just brings me out in a rash. I paid for business class. I deliberately pay for business class. I want business class, but I look and I think to get somewhere like Belfast is £250 for a single ticket. So that's £500 return to do a 1-hour flight within the UK, and it's the same if you're going to Glasgow, for instance. And I don't know what they end up doing for people who work and commute like that, or people who want to visit Scotland or Ireland or
businesses who are funding the business class flights for people who are working.
I mean, you can get to America cheaper than you can get to Glasgow.
All of this feeds into this poll rating that we've seen. Terrible news for Number 10. I mean, they're used to seeing terrible polls, frankly. But then in the Lords last night, 5 amendments by the Lords to this flagship Rwanda bill, likely to be rejected, I would suggest, back in the Commons. But again, a big problem for the government, because you definitely got the sense that members of this Conservative Party, particularly on the right, held their nose and agreed to vote for that, because this was exactly as far as they were prepared to go. Any watering down, as they perceive it, from the Lords will not wash. Where does this leave the flights to Rwanda?
Yeah, I think this is the big challenge, right? When the Prime Minister laid out his 5 priorities, I won't try and list them all this early in the morning, but one of them was stop the boats. That's probably the one that most people can say. And that people will be really frustrated at the fact that, the 5th biggest economy in the world, we're a major nuclear-powered military and all the rest of it, and we can't stop a couple of dinghies coming across. And it gets locked up inside the Lords, it gets locked up with lawyers and all these sorts of things. People thought, well, we voted leave, didn't we? I thought at least we'd be free of some of this stuff. I need to hear the European Convention on Human Rights come along, which was never designed to prevent a country like the UK from stopping people illegally coming into the country.
Why do we care what other countries think? Why don't we just buck all these people out? Why don't we stop them going to wherever they're going to, just throw them out to Rwanda? Who's going to do anything about it? You get them to Rwanda, it's somebody else's problem, surely. We had Priti Patel in here yesterday. He was talking quite straight about things, but totally unable to do anything. And the migration situation, we haven't even seen the worst of it, not even anywhere near the worst of it.
Yeah, I think you're about to talk about Arsenal beating Sheffield in a minute. And who sponsors them? The Visit Rwanda Tourism Board. The idea that it's not a safe country when you've got Premier League football clubs advertising people to come visit is mad. We're stuck inside the ECHR, and even though we've left, we tend to abide by these things because the British Civil Service likes to do everything by the book and it likes to gold plate things. France, still inside the European Union, it's inside the ECHR. It found a guy who was preaching hate in some mosque in the south of France, saying death to the West, France is evil, France is terrible. They get him, and 8 hours later, the guy's been deported to Tunisia because the French don't listen to this stuff and they don't care about it.
So then what happens? Somebody somewhere, some lawyers would say, oh, zut alors, you can't do this. You know, this is terrible. And then people just say, clear off. Nobody cares.
Absolutely. You say fermez la bouche once, they don't shut their mouths, and you clear them out. But the problem we've got here in the UK, I think, for a long time has been that this Rolls-Royce civil service that we always talk about is so officious and doesn't seem scared of the elected politicians. You mentioned someone like Priti Patel. Remember how difficult it was for her to get the Home Office to actually do anything. People in there whose job is meant to be dealing with terrorists and criminals and rape, and the worst people we've got inside the country, and they're not willing to do the things that need to be done to keep us safe.
Well, I suppose there would be people who'd say we have a proud history of looking out for those who are...
Yeah, but we're fed up with that
now. And they might
Everybody's
always point to the
that.
fact that there was a huge genocide in Rwanda and there's no free and fair democracy. That's the counter-argument. Listen, thank you very much. We'll have more from you a little bit later on, James. Always good to get your thoughts. James Price, former Chief of Staff.
Very interesting listening to you, James. Thank you very much indeed. Tomorrow evening here on the station, we'll be hosting a budget special. It's going to be live from Whitehaven, and you can be part of the audience. You can join Michelle Dewberry, Nigel Farage, who will be dissecting the budget live. Go to gbnews.com for more details.
Now, we're crossing the pond now. It is, of course, the biggest day in the race to the White House, Super Tuesday, where voters in 15 states and 1 US territory will choose their candidates for president.
So, could we be facing a 2020 election rematch, Trump against Biden? Or might Nikki Haley's campaign against Donald Trump pay off? No, it won't. No, it won't. But anyway, one man that can help answer all those questions, political analyst Eric Ham. Forgive me for maybe
Preempting that.
Preempting is the very term, preempting what you were going to say there. But Nikki Haley, why is she bothering? She's not going to win any of these next 15 that are coming up, Eric.
Boy, you are just really giving the story away. You're absolutely right. And we are on a collision course for a rematch of 2020. We're talking about, for Republicans, 1/3 of all delegates are up for grabs today. On the Democratic side, equally as many. And so I think we're expecting both Joe Biden and Donald Trump to win the lion's share of all of these delegates in these respective states. And that's going to put them just one step closer to not only securing the nominations for their respective parties, but also becoming the party's nominees and, of course, a rematch for 2020.
Eric, could that possibly happen? And Trump's one argument, but Biden, for goodness sake, we just saw him tottering there with his dog behind him. When is someone going to whisper in this man's ear, Joe, stand down, because whether you are mentally up to this or not, you do not look it?
Well, Joe Biden is not getting out of this race. He's going to secure the delegates to become the nominee. He's going to actually provide the State of the Union this coming Thursday here in Washington. And of course, he will certainly have to be ready. He will certainly have to look energetic, look fresh. And one thing that Biden has just refused to do throughout this campaign season is to actually lean into his age. I think what we're seeing here with Biden is he just eschews the stagecraft. And going back to 2020, remember, we were deep into the COVID-19 pandemic. So Biden was able to run his entire campaign literally from the basement of his house in Delaware. And I think he expects to have to just be able to do that again. And I think he's, in many ways, not only taking the process for granted, but also taking many of those older voters for granted as well. Remember, in the United States, about 26% of the voting electorate is age 65 and older. So there are a lot of people who would actually understand Biden's plight. But right now, what we're seeing is Biden simply isn't leaning into his age. And I think that's becoming more problematic for him as the days go by.
Speaking of leaning in, what about Trump? I mean, is this a home run for him now, or is he leaning into the remaining court battles that he faces and making political capital out of those?
Well, he certainly is. In fact, he got a big boost just yesterday with the Supreme Court in this 9-0 verdict over his running in or being on the ballot in many of these states. And that was very striking because we know how polarized the court is. We know how polarized Washington is. And we also know how polarizing Donald Trump is. And to see the court actually give a unanimous verdict, something we rarely see happen, I think that was something that is going to be a big boon to Donald Trump today, particularly when many of these states show Donald Trump up in some places, and for instance, up by 70 points. And so I think what we're going to see is Donald Trump's glide path to the nomination become even clearer after that ruling yesterday.
Eric, is today Super Tuesday or is it next week?
It's today.
Today. OK, thank you for that. Thank you for Eric. Good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Eric Ham, political analyst there, with his thoughts
all the way from DC.
What's going to happen. Thank you. Let's have a look at some of the other stories you're waking up to on this Tuesday morning.
A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 10-year-old girl was found dead in Sandwell in the West Midlands. The 33-year-old woman's understood to be known to the girl and has been arrested and taken into custody for questioning.
France has become the first country in the world to explicitly include the right to abortion in its constitution. The move enshrines women's guaranteed freedom to abortion. It passed with an overwhelming 780 votes to 72 and was greeted by a standing ovation during a vote at Versailles.
And work experience placements must be reinvented. Former Education Secretaries Baroness Morgan of Coates and Lord Blunkett have both said they've called for work experience to not only be a one-off event, adding that businesses should have an ongoing and meaningful relationship with secondary schools and colleges.
Right, if you're in Birmingham, what are you doing with your council tax? Later today, they will vote on its budget for the year ahead.
The plan there includes more than £200 million worth of cuts to services across the city after declaring bankruptcy late last year.
But how will those cuts impact everyday life for people living in the area. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson.
It's a budget that will change the lives of everyone in this city. After Birmingham City Council declared bankruptcy, it was clear that cuts were on their way, and now this local authority has revealed where the hundreds of millions of pounds worth of funding will be taken away from. £51.5 million is set to be cut from the children's, young people and families' budgets, cuts which have already been protested alongside the end of funding for all community centres. The council will make cuts to city operations in the hope they'll save £39 million in the next year. That includes dimming streetlights. Adult social care will be cut by £23.7 million. Birmingham is the youngest city in Europe, so axing money for youth services will hurt. Sabrina Dennis is the CEO of charity First Class Foundation and works with young people in the West Midlands.
My concerns are the safe spaces, the genuine lack already of safe spaces for young people. I think for that to all of a sudden disappear at a time when, especially in Birmingham, we're seeing so much, poverty, cost of living, violence, youth violence, it's kind of scary. And my concern is I don't actually know what it looks like on the other side.
Elsewhere, there's a worry parts of the city will fall into disrepair.
As you can see at this cemetery, we have potholes in the road, which are very large. We've also got this building behind us, which is derelict, and with council cuts, how are the council going to put these things right in the future?
John Gilmore has been campaigning for the council to better maintain public spaces like cemeteries.
I've had to literally beg the council for over a year to do things which is literally what I would call basic general maintenance of a cemetery, and that can't go on.
But how do people in this city feel about these cuts and council tax rises?
And I just do not see why the existing council taxpayers should be asked to pay to pick up the tab for something that is not their fault.
Disgraceful, really, isn't it, if you listen to it? And all the work they've done on Birmingham, and still haven't finished off half the projects.
I mean, I'd certainly be worried about raising council tax. I'd be less worried if I could see a proper plan of how it's going to be spent and what we're going to get as a benefit from that, rather than it just bailing out the council.
In response to the budget, leader of Birmingham City Council John Cotton said, "I want to apologise unreservedly for both the significant spending restrictions and this year's substantial council tax increase. We have no alternative than to face these challenges head on, and we will do whatever is necessary to put the council back on a sound financial footing. With the cuts coming to services and the rising costs for residents, there's dark days ahead for the second city." Jack Carson, GB News, Birmingham.
What a time to be alive. Budget tomorrow isn't bad enough. You've got all sorts of woes at various councils. Birmingham, not alone, of course, Woking, I think, Borough Council also facing huge financial problems. If you're one of those places, let us know how you feel about all of those things. To see a graveyard not being maintained, to see that social care for your loved ones might be in question. Such a disappointment when you're spending so much of your hard-earned cash.
I think what the government have to realise is that it's not all about money. You're either providing a service or you're not. I mean, for instance, the Chancellor wants to impose 20% VAT on taxi fares now as well. People find it hard enough to get around, to get a taxi, to get them from A to B, to get them out socially or to a hospital appointment during the day, whatever. And now a 20% VAT charge proposed on top of that. Absolutely ridiculous. We're going to talk about lights, the Northern Lights.
Well, yes.
South.
Well, we can do it now. We're about to talk about the weather, and there was a solar storm yesterday, which meant that the Aurora Borealis, which I'm yet to have seen, never seen the Northern Lights, could be visible all the way from Dorset all the way up to Scotland. Absolutely spectacular, and lots of people were snapping away yesterday. Lots of our big landmarks, things like Stonehenge, all lit up. Yeah, take a look at the pictures. I don't know what we're looking at there, but that's one of our beautiful landmarks here in the UK. But, I mean, I've always wanted... There's the Angel of the North, isn't it? Anthony Gormley's Angel of the North.
No, that's the one up at Stockport, isn't
Stockport.
it? Yeah. Not Stockport. It's in the northwest, anyway. And it'd be very nice. So it could be green, it can be purple, it could be lots of things there.
It's to do with particles from the sun colliding with the Earth's magnetic field. So I'm trying to find out where...
That was the beach in Merseyside, that one was.
Ah.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Did you see it? Get in touch with us.
Yeah, send us your pics.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Your snaps. Let us know all that. Morning, Aidan McGivern.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
Right.
You want to see here the rubbish? You want to see the rubbish I'm reading here? Right, so there's a clothing firm called North Face. They do big cuddly jackets and all sorts of things as well. Well, their bosses are now offering you, which is good news, a 20% discount on that, but only if you complete an online racial inclusion course. What has one thing got to do with the other? Is that saying that North Face customers are only solely white? You know, and you have to be more aware of other things. Do people of other persuasions and colours and all sorts of things don't buy North Face? But anyway, but it's just you just can't make it up. You just can't make it up. But there we go. That's that.
Anyway. It is the latest Great British giveaway this morning. We're offering you your chance to win £12,345 in cash, plus a whole host of seasonal treats, things like gardening gadgets and the like. Apparently, as soon as the clocks go back, like clockwork, every year, everybody starts gardening. So this is how you can get some gadgets.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, Paul Coit with your sport.
Arsenal. 6 goals. Could have been 12, could have been 15. Anyway, we'll talk about that in just a second.
OK.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, sports-wise, last night, top of the league. It is so tight up there with a good win by Arsenal last night, as we predicted on the programme yesterday.
I think the words were, I think I said it as well, let's pray for Sheffield United tonight, because Arsenal scoring 5. They scored 5 the other day. They scored 6 before that against West Ham. So Sheffield United just been so bad how it was going to be.
How often have they conceded 5 or 5
it's been a few.
By half-time?
Yeah, it's crazy. And the thing is, they were 3-0 down after 15 minutes. And Ollie Norwood was taken off after 17 minutes playing for Sheffield United. And I'm looking at social media and people going, oh, how awful for him to come off. I think, blimey, I'd want to be off, wouldn't you, if you were on there? At least he can walk away and go, nothing to do with me, Gov. So he tried to make some changes, but it was then 5-0 at half-time to Arsenal, then 6 just after half-time. That was when I decided I'm going to have to go to bed now and I'll see what happens in the morning. And that was how it stayed. Yeah. It could have been 10. Arsenal fans that I'm seeing everywhere going, this is going to be 10, it's going to be a record, we're going to score more goals than has ever been seen in the Premier League. Probably couldn't have been. Made some changes, Saka came off, but that's how it was in the end. So, incredible. So last 3 away games for Arsenal, 6-0, 5-0, 6-0.
So, between Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City...
Yeah.
Tight.
It's very tight, yeah, it is. And the thing is, you've got Liverpool, Man City, when they play, and Arsenal, if they win, they would go top. So it is very tight there.
Here, talking about going top, bullseye, the guy that used to call out the scores there, Tony Green.
Oh, yeah.
He's died.
Tony Green, he was 85, Tony Green. He'd had Alzheimer's for quite some time. But he was, along with Sid Waddell, so when, there was you used to do it, Frimley Green and the World Championship. It was Sid Waddell and Tony Green, and also Tony Green. See, I'm a huge Bullseye fan. It's still on.
I've got a bully.
Have you?
A real bully, yeah.
What, that size?
Yeah, I was filming on the behind the scenes of the set, and you got one, which was lovely.
What, did they just bring one out, or did you?
Yeah, no, they gave me one at the end.
Did you get a tankard? You didn't get the tankard?
No, I got a bully, but fun bully.
Did you get to have a go, though? Because, you'd have the dartboard with the questions. Eamonn!
Yeah.
They were lovely.
Good quiz.
No, and you know what? And it's still on TV. I still, and look what you could have won. And they bring out the speedboat, and there's someone's looking at that thing. What was I going to do with the speedboat? I don't know. Did they ever sell the speedboat if they won the speedboat?
Can I take the cash?
Yeah.
I'd be saying.
Yeah. But anyway, loved Bullseye. But poor Tony Green then passed away, 85 years old. Darts legend.
Right, Paul Tierney, referee, right? OK. So tell us the whole story about this.
Right, so Paul Tierney was the referee of Nottingham Forest versus Liverpool on Saturday. And it was 0-0 right up until the 99th minute when Liverpool scored the winner. Now, there's Paul Tierney there. Now, Forest had the ball. This is right towards the end of the game. And there was a head injury to Ibrahima Konate of Liverpool. So the referee said, right, we're going to stop the game. and we'll check on Konate, make sure he's OK. He's fine. So then what should happen is that Nottingham Forest should be given the ball because they were the ones that had it. But what he did was gave it to Kelleher, the Liverpool goalkeeper, and then carried on. Nobody made a huge fuss about it because nobody really noticed it. But then it took 1 minute and 50 seconds after that, Liverpool score. So then all hell breaks loose. It's like, yeah, no, this is not fair. That should have been our ball. I mean, it's still 1 minute and nearly 2 minutes went after that. So anyway, to cut a long story short, and I haven't really done that, but Paul Tierney is now not going to be refereeing in the next game for the Premier League. He's now been made to be VAR. So that's
but nobody reverses the point situation or whether the goal was a goal or whatever, which is the real injustice of it.
See, it is injustice, and it should have happened. But there are mistakes that happen all the time. But also, it was a couple of minutes as well, so there was still a fair bit of play that happened after that. But anyway, shouldn't have happened. He should have given the ball back to Forest, and then...
talking about a ball, quick one. You mentioned John Higgins. You mentioned this golden ball in snooker yesterday. This is the Riyadh World Masters.
Yeah, the Riyadh World Masters. The first time there's a golden ball now for a 147 maximum break. So if anybody does that, then they have to put the golden ball at the end. It sounds like bullseye, doesn't it? So they put the golden ball, they win 400 grand. John Higgins got very close. 15 reds, 15 blacks. Got very close to it, and you're thinking this is on. Weren't that many people, actually. There's John Higgins there. There weren't that many people, actually, in the audience. But there was a bit of shuffling around. So, anyway, he wasn't happy. He had a missed position in the yellow. And, when you get the reds and the blacks, you think it's on. All you got to do is pop the colours, go for the gold at the end, and then the 400 grand's his. But he missed the yellow. And, unfortunately, still that £400,000 in the pot. The gold ball has not been potted yet.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. We'll say goodbye to you. We'll say hello to our newspaper reviewers next.
Yes, they're going to be taking a look at the front pages as well as the biggest stories of the day in making the news. Today, we are joined by Rafe, Hadel Mancu and Claire Muldoon to do that with us. See you in a sec.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a crew that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the king was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America. So which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussexes' stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the King is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
If you're waking up, here's the newspapers, and this is what they're leading on.
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag this morning. The Guardian leading with the NHS facing the biggest cuts in real terms, they say, since the 1970s.
The Mirror leads with Rishi Sunak humiliated after the Conservatives plunged to their lowest ever poll rating.
The Tories are divided over the new definition of extremism. That's the headline for the front of the Times newspaper today.
Daily Telegraph next. It leads with a warning from Berlin's former intelligence chief who says German military leaks are just the tip of the iceberg.
And the Express leading with Priti Patel, who was talking to us as well yesterday. She was demanding France do more to justify the millions that the UK is giving to stop small boats coming here.
Joining us to go through what's making the news today, Royal Broadcasting historian Raif Haidel-Makou and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. Raif, let's start with Big Brother and the celebs who are in the house, and the one that's getting all the attention is Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales's uncle. In all of this. Tell us about him.
Yes, well, you know, every family has an embarrassing uncle, but fortunately most families don't get their uncles on a national platform to strut their stuff. Not so for the poor Middletons. Hard to find somebody more different to the Princess of Wales and her mother than Kate's uncle, Gary Goldsmith's family. He's a self-made millionaire. One might be wondering whether he does qualify to be an actual celebrity on Celebrity Big Brother, since most people have never heard of this chap before.
I was saying, so if he was a millionaire, he wouldn't be in there, but...
Apparently he sold his business for 17 million a few years ago.
For £17 million. Now, of course, no one wants to have, you know, an uncle dishing the dirt, but at least he's on side. Unlike, say, Meghan's family, where every relation of Meghan has been dishing the dirt against Meghan, he's very much Team Wales, and it's been suggested that he may use this platform to actually settle some scores with Meghan and Harry on the Princess of Wales's behalf, although without her permission, of course.
I think the timing of this is really odd, given that Kate is probably at her most vulnerable in all her time in public spotlight. Why would he choose now, given what a controversial character he is? He pleaded guilty, didn't he, to beating his ex-wife in a drunken rage and calling her horrendous things. He'd taken drugs. He settled and paid thousands of pounds. I mean, he is more than embarrassing. I mean, he brings shame, doesn't he?
He absolutely brings him. He's trying to put a positive spin on this. He said that he was read The Riot Act by his sister, mother of the Princess of Wales, Carol, and that he's going to be on his best behaviour in there. But yes, I mean, he's a very loose cannon. And of course, the problem with Big Brother is that no matter how much you try to put on a different persona, the real you always comes out.
Well, also editing as well. We all know that there can be editing, and you've got a microphone on, as you say, 24 hours a day. It's a dangerous old game. I'm sure they're absolutely squirming.
Of course they are. But what a big sign. As Eamonn quite rightly pointed out, I don't think there will be many of the public would actually know who he is.
But there's some good names. He's there. Louis Walsh is in for an hour or something.
Sharon Osbourne is a lodger. She's only in for 5 days. Do you know how much she's getting paid for that?
100k, isn't it?
100 grand.
100 grand a day. So that's £500,000 for the complete time that she's in.
Oh, I thought it was 100 grand for 5 days.
No.
Fern Britton is there as well.
Well, they'll be wanting her to dig the dirt on her ex-co.
She said she won't.
She what?
She said she absolutely won't.
She won't. She's too diplomatic. Levi Roots is there. Good bands, Levi. The rest of them I never heard of. Don't know any of them. But all very, very interesting.
But Gary's a bit of a diamond geezer, isn't he? He's like, you know...
Who, the uncle?
The uncle, yeah.
I'm amazed how they've kept him out of the public eye for so long, and I just can't believe the timing. Just when you really get the sense Prince William really wants to protect his wife and keep her out of the prying eyes. And there was it TMZ yesterday publishing pictures of her for the first time?
Did you see any of those pictures? Although, again, the timing of those photographs was interesting too, because people have been wondering very much about the real condition of the Princess of Wales, and so the fact that she was captured by these paps, whether that was a deliberate drive past there, we don't know, but at least we know that she is able to get out and about, perhaps on the school run. So that was an encouraging thing.
Or was it Pippa? There's so much. I mean, as you know, two young people who are going to become head of state, I think we should, and are funded by the public purse, I think we do have a right to know, and I just wish they had come out at the beginning and said what was wrong with Kate and allowed her then to have the privacy to get better, to convalesce, and then come back to royal duties. We're now facing a monarch that's ill, that's very ill, a queen who is absolutely exhausted, having to take a week away. Queen Elizabeth, we'd never heard her of being exhausted and having to take away.
She kept her health woes to herself. I mean, she had sporadic mobility issues towards the end. I think we all believe she had some form of leukemia.
But she was still front-facing.
No, but I do think she should be. I do think the Princess of Wales should be entitled to privacy, not least if it's embarrassing. We don't know.
Exactly. We don't know the nature. We shouldn't speculate on it.
I found myself in a marquee one day, and the only other person in that marquee was Prince Edward. And so I went in and I said, yes, sir, would you want a drink? Do you want a drink or anything? I said, well, what do you have? And I said, I'm thinking of having a shandy. And he says, yeah, I'll have a shandy too. So I went and poured him a shandy, him and me in this marquee, just on our own. I thought, what am I going to talk to him about? And do you know what I said to him, Rafe? I said to him, well, how's your mother? How's your mother keeping? He said, well, she's just actually had her knee operated on. So we then talked about her knee and how she gets on and off a horse.
And was that a secret at the time? It wasn't in the public domain?
Well, I'm just saying he talked about it. He extolled it. You know, we got into it and very much enjoyed our shandies, which was good. Let's talk about Rishi Sunak can't be enjoying polls, Claire.
No, he certainly can't.
I think humiliation's quite an appropriate word for the latest one.
And even the fact it is from a very left-wing paper, The Mirror, the headline, on the run, Conservative support falls to 20%, the lowest ever rating. Are we surprised? Are we really? I'm certainly not. But what's the alternative? I mean, I'm sorry, Labour seem to have a magic money tree where things are going to come. You were talking about Birmingham local authority going bankrupt. We've got services, NHS going to be cut in real time for the first time in 50 years. The Conservatives, I don't think, can do anything. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. We've got the budget tomorrow with Jeremy Hunt. There's talk about two pence off your income tax rate. And he's slashing spending. Where is the money supposed to come from? That's the question. And people don't like, things being cut. And I certainly don't like the 20% VAT added onto taxi rides because they, for freelancers, are tax deductible in some parts.
But there's certain places, I don't know what Glasgow's like, in Belfast, you can't get a taxi, basically, because the people who are the taxi drivers just walk away from it because it's not worth it anymore. And they can't there are no foreign drivers anymore.
Phone a cab. They were great.
Yeah.
And so...
But what I'm saying, it's difficult to get a booking, and it's and these guys are finding it difficult to hold down the job. Now, to come along and say we're going to put 20%
back
on top of everything else is madness.
I went to Glasgow a couple of weekends ago and it was a late flight. I had to get a taxi, the white cabs, because you can't get any other cab at Glasgow Airport, to my mother's. Now, it's literally a 20-minute drive. £27 it was. £27. And I got read the riot act by the driver. You don't know what my insurance is. You don't know what my... I said, I don't need to know. You're providing the service, mate. But I'm paying for it.
But we take his point. You're right. But the next time you'll arrange someone to come and pick you up if the greedy airports, and this is the greedy bit, don't charge you £7 or so.
Exactly, which they're doing as well.
Yeah, that's the really scandalous bit. It's not that I object to the taxi drivers. I object
to £27 set by Renfrewshire City Council for the meters.
Yes.
Extortion.
I mean, the poll ratings are so bad for the Tory party. It reminds me of the 1993 election in Canada when the government had 169 majority, went down to 2 seats. That's the only thing comparable I can think of what we're having here. And there's no chance they're going to win the election. I don't know why the Chancellor of the Exchequer doesn't promise everybody a Rolls-Royce and free Netflix. That may at least get them a few more MPs than they would otherwise have.
There's this pretense that they think the public trusts them more with the economy than they do the Labour Party. And if they're shown not to be profligate with anything, then this will score well.
I think if you Google... rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, a picture of Sunak and Hunt should pop up because I think it's far too late and this is just all too depressing. And of course, what he's been doing is, all of these tax cuts, he knows that he'll never have to defend them and make the spending cuts
that
will be necessary next year.
But what he did want to achieve before the election was this Rwanda bill. He wanted to get it all royal assent by the 20th of March. 5 amendments made last night in the Lords. Priti Patel on this programme yesterday, and she's also done an interview front of the Express this morning, saying France needs to just pull their finger out. They're getting 500 million a year from us. And yet we hear that the Home Secretary had this new meeting yesterday in Brussels over Calais sharing of intelligence. Yeah. Wait a minute, why wasn't that being done already to try and ensure that they don't allow any more people smuggling and boats to cross? Doesn't reassure me a huge amount that that's, being touted as a brand new policy.
Well, of course it's not. I mean, we've sat here and prevaricated for years saying the business model has to be cut. People can't be... It's a form of human trafficking, in my view, as well, actually. It's as serious as that. And for Dame Priti Patel to come out and demand robust action after 527 migrants arrived in the past 48 hours, it's just plain scandalous.
Well,
it really is.
This is like Groundhog Day, isn't it? We've had this discussion and we keep giving the French more money. They don't do anything about it. You know, I mean, the Belgians will go into the water to stop the boats from leaving. The French refuse to do that. And we should say to them, if you're not going to do what the Belgians will do, let our chaps come over and we'll do it for you. You were very happy for us to come over at Dunkirk and evacuate the French army. You owe us one here, and let us police your borders if you're incapable of doing it.
Well, I think the French are doing a fantastic job at giving tourism advice to people who want to come to Britain by saying how great it is.
Well, there's a French politician who said if you want to stop them coming over, make Britain less attractive than France. The Danes did it. They just cut benefits by 50%, confiscate all jewellery and assets from anyone coming to use that. There are so many ways in which you can actually make Britain less attractive than France, and yet, unfortunately, our government likes to talk tough, but they don't actually do anything.
No, you're absolutely right. They talk tough, they do nothing. Now, a lot of people say that's because lawyers stand in the way and they get in the way. But what if you were to defy the lawyers? It's all this thing, where do we stand? Where would we look with the rest of Europe? People would look down on us. People would think that we don't do this or don't do that. But I think it's about time we stood up and said, we're not interested. Or words to that effect.
The Italians and the French have always flouted the law with no harm whatsoever. The Danes were put before the ECHR on these same issues, and they just thumbed their noses at them. Well, somehow we think that we are the land of the rule of law, and we must always set an example. But you're quite right. I think those moments, that time has gone.
That ship has sailed.
That ship has sailed.
Speaking of ships sailing, slavery, Rafe, front of the Mail this morning, big row yesterday, and the church agreeing to a historic payout, but now there's a backlash. Lots of vicars and what do you call a female vicar? Up and down the country, you know, saying this is going to bankrupt the church.
Quite rightly, here we go again, £1 billion fund. You know, it used to be said that the Church of England was the Conservative Party of prayer. I think these days it's BLM at prayer. It seems more likely than anything else. And, you know, I was just thinking, how would you feel if you were one of those sexually abused victims alive today who hasn't got any compensation? You know, in 2018, Justin Welby said there'll be £200 million set aside for you. 6 years later, they're still waiting. And instead of that, the Church of England is prioritising an issue from 200 years ago where there is nobody alive today who's a victim of slavery. We're talking about 8 generations. And this money is going to go to black-led schemes. Now, the suggestion there is that all black people are the victims of slavery. You know, there are lots of black people who have no connection to slavery whatsoever. There are millions of people in the world who are the descendants of black slave owners because there were just as many... There were more Africans kept in bondage in Africa than ever went over the Atlantic. And yet the Church of England seems to somehow treat all black people as if they're victims. I think it's very damaging to social cohesion, for one thing, and it's also very patronising towards black people.
Can the church afford this? Or, you know, when you think of diminishing congregations and you think about church steeples and roof repairs and all the rest of it...
And all the copper and nickel being nicked.
Do they have enough cash, or are they
don't. They've got a black hole.
Mm.
I mean, well, I don't know. I understand that because they got all the churches free from the Catholics and the Reformation. So I don't know why they don't have enough money.
But yeah, I don't know why they don't... You know, the problem is people often leave stuff to the Church of England in their wills and donations, but if they think this money is going to go onto this scheme, they'll be less likely to do that. Why don't they just deal with the disadvantage without any colour bar? I don't see why they don't... White working-class boys are the most disadvantaged.
And all county lines, these young lads are being slaved. It's human trafficking. It's slavery. We need to deal with the here and now. Forget the past, OK? That's done. That's a benchmark, and we should be learning how not to live from the past. That's what history teaches. We have to deal with the here and now, move forward, and for heaven's sake, try and make the world a better place.
Hallelujah.
Listen to people. They don't listen to their electorate. They don't listen. They'll listen after this election, so they will all too late then. Let's talk about petrol and diesel rises here, Rafe. Where are we at with this?
Yes, so once again, the poor beleaguered motorists, the war against them continues, as we know that drivers have now had the biggest monthly jump in fuel prices in 5 months, by the pumps rising by 4p a litre. And it seems, you know, the cost of having a car now is just so prohibitive. Apparently 8% of the population is below the poverty line today because of their transport costs, with up to 1/5 of people's incomes now being spent on keeping and maintaining a car. And of course this...
And it's also just not that, it's deliveries to us. Everything that's delivered to a shop or delivered to you is higher in price because of higher fuel prices.
Might we see a fuel duty freeze extension tomorrow, and does that feed into all of this, and would that be welcome, or is it pretty much absorbed by the...
Well, that's just it. So when you have these fuel rises, then obviously the impact of the Chancellor's alleged freezing of fuel duty and extending the temporary 5p cut gets eaten up. But actually, you know, it has been frozen for 14 years, and so actually the cost of your daily or filling up your tank is actually £16.50 cheaper because of freezing it for 14 years, as opposed to if it had kept in line with rising with inflation. So some benefit there, but yeah, most of this is going to actually be consumed by this 4p rise.
Okay. Claire, NHS, always... We're never going to get anywhere with funding the NHS, but it's front page of The Guardian today, and we're talking about more cuts.
It is, but I think instead of cutting it with money, they should be cutting it with services. You know, things like plastic surgery, things like IVF, things like, you know, non-essential services, right, I think should be cut.
You see, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, the woman talks sense.
Yeah. Because you know me, and I do.
But there'll be so many
there's a
people
but.
saying, I have my right, I wanted my...
That wasn't what the NHS was set up for as well, you know, and as well as our viewers should know. You know, we pay the tax and we have the service. You walk into an accident and emergency now and everyone seems sedated. There's no, like, blood, vomit, whatever. And people will say, yeah, I was in the NHS. Clearly, OK, there are some cases where that is true. But the services have been reflected. They've been pushed back. It's called 111. And they're so frightened to say, take a paracetamol, have a lie down, you will be fine. They're so frightened of perhaps a lawsuit, perhaps you gave me that advice, I took your advice, and my uncle died.
Let me ask you, if someone, for instance, wants to have a child and they're having difficulty conceiving, is that the job of the NHS?
No, it's really not, in my view.
OK. See what you think. That's what Claire's thinking. gbviews@gbnews.com. Let us know. Anything else, Rafe, that you think the NHS is doing that it's no right to do, or it's going to have to rethink to get costs under control?
Well, actually, I think there's some agreement here also. And, of course, we have had the stories, of course, about trans surgeries as well and surgery there, which I think is another issue which needs to be examined. You know, we've got now the biggest waiting list because of COVID. You know, this couldn't happen at a worse time. You know, 12% of our budget is spent actually on the NHS, by far our biggest thing, and it's still not enough to actually deal with all of the health issues. And it never will be enough, right? And it never will be. So I think, along with this, we do need to have an honest, serious conversation about restructuring the National Health Service. There are many good examples. The comparison with America is always made. No, there are so many other far better systems we can use and get inspired by. So who knows? You know, the one thing about Labour, I would say, is that they are rather good at dealing with these sorts of programmes. So, but they're so beholden. But they're so beholden to the NHS that I think that they won't actually be able to.
Problem that this is like the sacred cow that no politician dares tamper with because it's an electoral suicide mission if you do that. And yet we're all suffering as a result because quite clearly it's not doing what it set out to do.
It's not.
And it really does need widespread reform. I think it should be taken out of the hands of politicians. There should be some sort of royal commission and it really needs a whole overhaul. But let me know what you guys think. That's just my humble opinion. And we have to say goodbye to Ray. We're out of time, but we have plenty more to discuss with them just after 7:30 and just after 8:30 this morning. So lots more from them.
So your views very, very welcome. Please do get in touch, and Claire and Rafe will be back in about 40 minutes' time. Let's get an update of what's happening weather-wise today, and on this Tuesday morning, it's Aidan McGivern.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock, it's Tuesday the 5th of March. You are very welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Very nice to see you. Here are the headlines on this Tuesday morning. As the Conservatives face a fresh Rwanda defeat in the House of Lords and a new poll humiliation, will Jeremy Hunt's budget turn it around?
Super Tuesday, it is the biggest day of the primary calendar in the race to the White House, but will Donald Trump finally clinch the nomination, or could his rival Nikki Haley surprise everyone?
A new season of Celebrity Big Brother. Could the Princess of Wales' uncle spill the beans about her health condition and the rest of her family? We'll be speaking to a former contestant. We'll be saying hello, good morning and welcome to Kerry Katona very shortly.
7:20, amid a shocking rise in shoplifting across the UK, we'll be debating whether it's ever justifiable.
And in the sport this morning, Arsenal only managed to score 1 goal in the second half against Sheffield United last night. Yes, they scored 5 in the first half, but that's not the point, is it? Harry Kane hopes to avoid another trophy disappearing this evening with the Champions League, and there's more F1 controversy, but it's nothing to do with Christian Horner this time.
Finally, a drier week of weather to come, although still some rain to talk about in the forecast. Coming up, all the details very soon.
So it is our lead story this morning. We're one day away from Chancellor Jeremy Hunt handing down his spring budget, where rejuvenating the economy and addressing the cost of living crisis will be front and centre.
Politically, the pressure's on to turn the tide as Conservative support fell to its lowest level, according to the latest polls.
And to make matters worse, overnight the government suffered a string of defeats in the House of Lords to its flagship immigration policy, that is, the Rwanda bill.
So, ahead of the budget, we've taken to the streets of Cottingham in East Yorkshire and Glasgow to see what you want from the budget.
I'd like to see him listen to the people as well for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
No increase on petrol is a big one, because I live in rural Lincolnshire and I use my car a lot.
They can start by spending it on helping homelessness.
Reduce the taxes and try to support the people to open new businesses.
A more generous housing market would be great. That would be lovely.
Like healthcare as well.
Raise your tax allowance, because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
Thought that was Stanley Johnson for a minute there. Stood next to that lady, I think that was in Cottingham. But anyway, joining us this morning to discuss all of this, former Labour advisor Kevin Meager, and we're joined again by the former Chief of Staff to Nadeem Zahawi, James Price. Welcome, both of you. Let's start with you, Kevin, because, look, if the papers are to be believed anyway, it feels as though the Treasury have even been looking across to the Labour Party to possibly steal some of their ideas, possibly even looking to abolish the nom-dom status.
Well, that's exactly, that is a turn up for the books. I think what it reflects is that Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, he's in a pretty tight spot, because he's got the economics and the finance to contend with. That's his job. He's Chancellor of the Exchequer. But the entire political fortunes of the Conservative Party and this government also rest on his shoulders. And in many respects, what we see this week is the Tories drinking in the famous last chance saloon. This is the final opportunity before a general election, probably in the autumn, for the government to reset the political narrative. Now, you said a minute ago that the most recent opinion polls have the Tories behind in one of them by 26 points, and the other one by 27 points. So this is kind of disaster territory that they reside in at the moment. So the Tory MPs will be looking to Jeremy Hunt to, as I say, to reset the political position for them, to give them a fighting chance to kind of narrow that gap and show that they are competitive ahead of that general election. Now, can he do it? It's probably too big a task for anybody, I would suggest.
Well, because Kevin, this is what I don't understand. He can do what he wants because he's probably going to lose the election anyway. So why wouldn't you go out with a bang and go out as if people say, "Wow, that's what we could be missing in the future"? You must be absolutely delighted that what's been leaked so far is so dull, so boring, so non-effective.
I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, chancellors tend to fall into two categories. I mean, Gordon Brown famously said there are two kinds of chancellors. There's the chancellors who manage to get out in time, and there are the chancellors that don't, i.e. all chancellors' careers are ultimately doomed. So I think people in Jeremy Hunt's seat tend to make a decision to say, do I do the absolutely popular and political thing, which sometimes leads to disaster further down the line? And we saw that, of course, with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's disastrous budget 18 months ago. Or do I protect my own personal reputation as somebody that made the right decisions, the wise decisions, even if they're also not the most politically expedient decisions? situation. So you look at chancellors like Alistair Darling or Roy Jenkins and people like that. And I suspect Jeremy Hunt is equivocating between the two. He's got to please his own backbenchers. He's got to try and move the dial politically in the country. But I suspect he's looking at this and saying it's probably too big a task for me to be able to do. So do the right thing rather than the popular thing.
Would you agree with that, James? I have to say, I think Jeremy Hunt looks to me like a legacy person, somebody who's concerned about his reputation rather than perhaps giving the squeaky wheel all the oil. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this has been explained very well. I think it's a really tough situation. You've got the political considerations again. That's maybe why the idea of taking one of the few Labour policies that are left, this abolishing non-dom status, might be in play. I hope it's not true. And then you've got the kind of what actually would be good for the country in the long run. And I think what would be wonderful to see is if Hunt can square the circle, like all politicians like to do. But I think, as you say, if you just go out with a bang and say, right, we're just going to scrap inheritance tax. It's a hated tax. It doesn't bring in that much money when you actually work out how much it costs in terms of people moving money to places.
Such a small percentage of people. It's such a Tory policy.
It does in the headline, but actually, if you look at all the other kind of economic activity that it creates, people move money away. It means they don't hire more people. It means they don't give parts of their companies to employees who work really hard. All these other kind of second-order effects. So that would be something really good. It'd be good red meat, so it'd be good politically, and I think it would be good for the economy in the long run, and it would be aspirational for more people who want to pass.
James, if you were, I'm going to ask you both this, but James, if you were Chancellor, what would you do that you think would genuinely affect people and be popular?
So I think that's definitely one of them. I think there's something like scrapping a tax like that. I think it just also, in the way that people like Nigel Lawson in the past used to try and scrap a tax every single budget, I think that shows that Britain's open for business and it trusts people to keep more of their money. And I think the other thing is that we talked about this before, but Treasury boffins, the people that work all these things out, including this other body called the Office for Budget Responsibility that was made by George Osborne to try and keep spending restrained, I think it's become too much of a constraint. It will only positively score certain things. So it's the body that says immigration is always good for the economy, for example, and it won't let chancellors do other things. And I think that's been the major constriction that's prevented it from doing more bold and brave things.
Yeah, but, you know, the last time we heard somebody wanting to shun a big sort of, what do you want to call it, mainstream institution like the OBR was Liz Truss, and we saw how that played out. And I'm leaving it to the Labour spokesperson now to defend the OBR. We heard the Chancellor arguing why he thinks it's important to listen to them.
What would you do? What would you introduce, Kevin?
In terms of taking over the hand of cards that Jeremy Hunt has got on the table, it's incredibly difficult. You know, politically, what he needs is tax cuts, and his MPs need 2p taken off the basic rate of income tax. That would grab the headlines. That would help to reset things. But that looks like it's not likely. It looks instead as though there'll be some reduction, possibly 2p in national insurance. But people don't understand what national insurance is. You know, people understand what income tax is, and that's part of the difficulty of being Chancellor, that you've got to blend together the economics and the finance and the politics. And if you don't get that blend right, either you end up with economic and financial problems, or you end up with political problems. And in a sense, he's got to choose the lesser of several evils here. You know, they're talking this morning of maintaining the cut in fuel duty. I think that's probably sensible. I think if he did make a move on non-doms, it would be problematic for Labour, because of course Labour is intending to do that itself, and then that will fund some Labour spending commitments. So if he moves into that territory, it sort of sharpens up the political divide and forces Labour onto the back foot a little bit. Now, it's probably marginal, because I don't think there's an awful lot Jeremy Hunt or any Conservative minister can do at this stage. I think this government has lost its lifeblood, is draining away from it.
He can do anything he wants, as I keep saying. And one of the things he shouldn't be doing is putting 20% VAT on taxi drivers. That'd be popular straight away, or unpopular if he does it. Kevin, thank you. James, really appreciate your take. Both of you appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder, we are hosting a special budget programme live from Whitehaven tomorrow night. You can be part of that audience. It'll be hosted by Michelle Dewberry and Nigel Farage, who will be looking at the budgets, and all the details are on our website, gbnews.com, for more details.
Celebrity Big Brother started on ITV last night. It returned to your screens after a 6-year absence. 13 celebrities entered the house, including Sharon Osbourne, Louis Walsh, Fern Britton and Kate Middleton's uncle, a man called Gary Goldsmith.
Well, we're now joined by the former Big Brother contestant herself, Kerry Katona, regular on the channel. Good morning to you, Kerry. Did you watch it last night? And who stood out for you?
I didn't watch it last night because it's far past my bedtime, so I watched it very early this morning. I think it's really, really good. I know 5 of them. I know Louis really well, Sharon really well, David Potts I know, Zizi, Lauren Simon, and Fern Britton, obviously.
OK, and what about all the headlines that are being made by Gary Goldsmith? Do you think it's a dangerous old game? You can have a microphone on you 24 hours a day. You're putting your life in the hands of the channel's editors. You know, do you think that this could be a big misstep for the Middleton family anyway?
You know what? I feel really, really bad. I mean, the Royals have had a really, really rubbish time of it lately, and I feel like putting somebody like Uncle Gaz in there is really not going to help matters. I mean, especially what's going on with Carl, Kate's King Charles. Kate's off the face of the earth. She clearly can't be watching the show, obviously. If she is, she's probably sat behind the sofa or watching it through her hands. But I take everybody on face value. You know, he could be a really nice guy. Who knows what he's going to say? I don't like judging people when I've never met them and I don't know who they are. So hopefully this will give us a chance to get to know him. And as a public person, being nosy as I am, maybe tell us where the hell Kate's gone.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look at him, Kerry. Let's get a picture, somebody, of Gary Goldsmith up on screen here. And, oh, that's not the picture I wanted, but anyway, he's got...
You can see a bit of James Middleton in his face, actually, when you see him like that.
Yeah, he has glasses on now most of the time. And we think, Kerry, he just looks like a stocky version of Alan Carr when he has his glasses on and his big teeth on show and things like that.
Sticking his tongue out.
Yeah, I just think, you know, I think he's going to be probably straight away one of the most unliked characters that are in there. Because I do love the royal family. You know, I think obviously since the Queen passing, it's never been the same since. But I feel like they've had a really, really hard time of it. And I feel like everyone's going to be very protective of the royal family. But also, on the other hand, we are all nosy. We all want to know what's going on. We want to know the secrets. We want to know the nitty-gritty. We want to know the goss. So hopefully he will give us that. And that's what he's in there for.
Yeah.
He's a watch to the family. How is he going to know any of this anyway?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, don't know. I think.
Who else has caught your eye in there? I see Fern Britton's in there. Louis Walsh is going to dip in and out. You mentioned Sharon Osbourne there. Eamonn Sue. Who else has caught your attention?
I thought David Potts got a real hard time with it last night. I've known David for years. I've worked on many shows with David, and he has a big heart of gold. Watching Louis, now I know Louis very, very, very well. I stayed at Louis's house, and I think Louis pushed Sharon to put David in the ring of fire because he's a very loud character, David, but he has a heart of gold, and I think Louis is going to be very uncomfortable. As soon as Sharon leaves, which I think she's only in there for 5 days, if I'm right, I think Louis is going to struggle. I think Louis is going to struggle being in there. I think he'll navigate towards Fern Britton. I think that's who he'll become best is with. But I think out of everybody that is in there, I think it's going to be Louis that's going to struggle the most.
What is it like having a microphone on you 24/7? More than a microphone, cameras on you whilst you're sleeping. You know, what's the stress like? You know, wondering what the world thinks of you and what the headlines are. I mean, these are people who are used to celebrity and fame like you, but it's still got to be a bit of a pressure cooker.
To be honest with you, out of all the reality shows that I have done, Big Brother was probably one of my favourites because you don't have your phone. You're not constantly thinking what are other people thinking about you. For me, the only thing I really struggled with was missing my children. That's the longest I've been away from my kids at that time. And I think I got a bit of peace and quiet from it, to be honest with you, not knowing what is actually going on in the real world. And I love doing reality shows. I love entertaining. I love being a part of history and saying, I did that. I did that. And every time it comes on, I get proper jealousy. Oh, my God, I so want to go back in because it's always a great... You're creating an amazing memories. For me, that's what it is. And on my deathbed, I can go, I've done so much.
For £100 a night, I think most people would be up for some of those memories.
Yeah, but even for me, like when I did the jungle back in the day, I didn't get paid anything near that. But I thought, what an adventure. And I truly mean that. I get offered to do these shows and I think nobody else normally gets to do this kind of stuff. And the life I've lived, I'm very lucky and blessed to be alive and still be here. I want to create amazing adventures for myself and my kids.
Yeah.
So everyone who has gone in there now, Ekin Sushi turns up to an envelope and does all the reality shows now. Fair play to her.
Yeah.
How come they never brought back that Christmas toy show that you and me did?
I knew you were going to mention that. I knew you were going to mention. You mentioned
Come on,
it.
tell us more. What Christmas toy show?
I wasn't that part, Eamonn. I was going through divorce. Which one you after? Don't know that many.
Good point, my friend. I'll see you again soon. Thanks for that.
Eamonn. I love you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. But you know, imagine lying in bed and a camera being on you.
I can't think of anything worse.
Do you snore?
I don't snore, and I do actually tend to have the duvet almost completely over my head, so I think I'd be all right at night. But, you know, me with the microphone on 24 hours a day, I'd get myself in trouble. I just would. That's why, luckily, I would never be in a Big Brother house. Would you ever do it? You've obviously been approached lots of times, and why don't you want to do it? Because, like me, you couldn't be on mic all day long.
Oh, no, I think like the jungle is humiliating. It's just about like how much rubbish can you stick in your mouth.
Or how far can they push you to the edge of sanity?
Yeah. So I think I'm already at the edge of sanity. So we don't need anything else to put me over the edge. And here's some other stories that are coming into the newsroom on this Tuesday morning. Just let's bring you up to date. A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder. This is after a 10-year-old girl was found dead in Sandwell in the West Midlands. The woman's 33 years of age and she's understood to be known to the girl. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at the scene and he will bring you the latest. Jack.
So a child with injuries, West Midlands Police say, was found at an address here on Robin Close at around 12:10 yesterday, and she was tragically confirmed dead at the scene. Now, police also confirming that a 33-year-old woman who they understand to be known to the girl has been arrested and taken into custody, and that questioning will continue today. In terms of what's going on here at the scene, there is a forensic tent outside the property's door, as you can probably see behind me, as those forensic investigations continue today. But of course, this investigation very much in the early stages. Tributes are being laid here, teddies included by members of the community, and West Midlands Ambulance Service, a spokesperson for them, confirming yesterday that when they'd sent 2 ambulances and a paramedic officer to the scene yesterday, it was clear upon their arrival that there was nothing that could be done to save this 10-year-old girl, and she was confirmed deceased at the scene.
Jack, thank you very much.
France has become the first country in the world to explicitly include the right to abortion in its constitution. The move enshrines women's guaranteed freedom to abortion. It was passed with an overwhelming 780 votes to 72 and was greeted by a standing ovation during a historic vote at Versailles.
The government has suffered a string of defeats to its flagship immigration policy, the Rwanda Bill. In the Lords, this was overnight. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more being voted on come tomorrow. The Prime Minister previously warned the Lords against frustrating the will of the people by hampering the passage of the safety of Rwanda.
Take a look at the forecast now. Aidan McGivern with all the details.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, Frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
To break in the rain would be good. It was a bit better yesterday, but I've had enough now.
Well, especially as we look ahead to spring and the spring essentials that you could win with our latest Great British Giveaway.
Yes, that includes a garden gadget package, a shopping spree and £12,345 in cash.
Here's all the details if you want to have a go.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Right, still to come, shoplifting is on the rise and there were over 5 million cases last year, I believe. We'll be debating, coming up in just a moment, whether or not it can ever be justified. I think it's quite a simple answer to that. No. Let us know what you think. We'll be debating it after this.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you know, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind. For which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head. But you know, he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're going to talk about shoplifting now, and there's a shocking new report. It says cases of shoplifting increased from 1 million to over 5 million just over the past couple of years.
But with families and societies most vulnerable bearing the brunt of the cost of living crisis, we're asking today if shoplifting can sometimes be justified.
OK, well, we've got Mike Neville. Mike's a former detective chief inspector. He says no, it can't. But the lady beside me here, Samantha Lee Howe, says it can. Samantha, could you tell me under what circumstances you believe it's OK to steal?
Well, I don't obviously believe it's OK to steal at all, because that is morally wrong. However, I think we have to look at why there has been an increase. And I think when we look at the state of the country at the moment, with the increase in prices, increase in energy prices, and of course the fact that supermarkets are gouging people with their price increases as well. For example, my own shopping bill has gone up by 30 to 70% on some of my essential items. And I look at this and I think, well, how can people who, when we've got 1 in 5 people in this country that are living with an income below the poverty line, how on earth can they afford to pay for everything, feed their families? And under certain circumstances, you know, you can almost see why they're doing it.
But you can't, Mike.
No, I can't. And the fact that, well, the government spends £250 billion on welfare every year. The amount of shoplifting is not driven by people stealing a tin of cat food or some baby milk. What it's driven by is drug addicts, people who are alcoholics, and organised criminals who now see that they can simply get away with this. And so and then what has happened, as well as the increase you've seen there in the actual numbers, there's been a doubling of the amount of violence towards shop staff, because these people now feel absolutely entitled to steal. So when they grab something and somebody tries to stop them, they'll use violence. And so a lot of the people who suffer in this are the little small shopkeepers who are really making not much money at all through their work. And so with all the food banks, the welfare are available, I come from a single parent mother, my mother in Bolton, she would never have thought of stealing anything. And it's just not good enough. And I think just what it shows is this like moral breakdown in society. It shows broken Britain, and it's really not good enough.
And what do you say to that, then, that, you know, there is a safety net for people who are in the poverty trap, that they can call on benefits, they can go to the food bank, and perhaps there's this sense of shame that has gone?
Well, to be honest with you, I was in a shop myself recently with my husband, and a homeless person came in and he stole a sandwich, and my husband went up to the counter and paid for it because... To be honest with you, I don't know what circumstances that man ended up on the street, but we have to look at this from a human point of view. You know, I don't condone it one little bit. But there's got to be a better way to deal with it.
It's heartbreaking, and well done your husband for doing that. But you see, I think Mike's got a very good point there, that you and I are thinking about, you know, people who literally just can't afford to feed 4 children or whatever it happens to be. But Mike's saying there's just a lot of people here who would do anything to get a drink or to get a hit of whatever they're on.
Eamonn and I were sitting at a meal 6 months ago, and somebody we know just in the middle of the conversation dropped in that his parents were shoplifters. And we were absolutely gobsmacked, weren't we? Could not believe what we were hearing. And wonder if that's just a sign that, you know, people feel they can act without any repercussions. There's no risk to them anymore. They can justify it. Well, you know...
No, but his argument was, Isabel, that the pension, which is something we're going to talk about later, at 156 quid a week or whatever, just didn't support
But there are
them.
food banks.
I mean, the most organised I've ever seen is there was a pub and it had a really nice menu. This was in near Victoria, and you went in there. You could organise. It's a bit of a rubbish pub, but you could organise nice food. Across the way was an M&S petrol station, so the landlord would task the drug addicts in the back to go and shoplift the food that you wanted. So what was on your plate had been nicked about 10 minutes before. It's just out of control, and people think there's no prison sentences now. So the 12-month prison sentence has been removed by a Conservative government. If it's under £200, it's not an arrest. It's a summary-only offence. And so what it's
That's
been...
if the police even attend, Mike.
If they attend. So even if they attend, you've got a 1% chance of not getting a 12-month sentence. So no wonder people are doing it. Steal £195 worth of goods and you're away, you're scot-free. And it's letting the society down.
Isabel, you mentioned the food banks, of course. Well, I did check my local area for food banks, and it occurred to me that on the website it said go to this website to see where these food banks are. But if you're homeless and you have no phone, you have no access to internet, how are you to know where these food banks are? It's another thing that needs to be addressed.
Rents, mortgages. I mean, how people can even keep a roof over their head. It is a terrible situation.
Even middle.
Yeah.
But you're always going to get that situation, aren't you, whereby some people will do anything, do whatever it takes, eat into whatever savings they've got to pay their rent, to keep a roof over their head. And other people won't. Other people will do something that shortcuts the system, and maybe that involves stealing. No?
Well,
sorry, can
I guess you have to be desperate, is what I'm saying.
I think people are desperate.
I think you have to be desperate to do it. Certainly, I wouldn't do it. A normal person wouldn't do it. They would try to do everything but that.
You know, middle-class people, when they go to these self-checkouts, putting the odd avocado through and charging it as something else. Casual shoplifting is on the rise.
Because, again, you've mentioned there's no shame in it, and people know there's no consequences. And what happens is if people see everybody else is doing it, then they can have a go. And this is what's happening. It's so rife now. But the report that was mentioned is saying that every time you go to a shop now, you're paying about a 10p crime tax because you're making up for the goods
pay
stolen.
for security, extra security.
Absolutely.
In the shop. Right, fascinating, Mike. Thank you very much indeed, Samantha. Thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to both of you. Live pictures coming in now from SpaceX crew. This is the Elon Musk craft as it's taking a crew of 3 men and a woman in a capsule for a 6-month stay on the International Space Station.
Yeah, this is due to happen around 8 o'clock, we're told this morning. 3 American astronauts, 1 Russian cosmonaut, and once they dock, assuming they do, they'll be joining the crew who are already on the International Space Station of 7 people, and they'll be conducting 200 scientific experiments over the next 6 months. But that Endeavour spacecraft due to touch down on the International Space Station in the next half an hour. We'll keep an eye on those live pictures for you. You can see them all in there. I don't know what you call it. We'd call it a news gallery, but I suppose that's their kind of Floridian mission control, the very thing. There we go. We'll keep an eye on that for you.
Well, that's a waste of money, isn't it? That's the thing.
Private enterprise, though, isn't it?
I do look, Mike, and I do think the money and the resources towards that could be used better.
Although the scientific experiments, I mean, they're talking about them, some of the pages of the papers this morning about what they'll be able to do in space could apply to babies that are unborn with conditions that they have. I mean, we make a lot of scientific developments.
They can make anything up. They can say, they just call it. he's an experiment we're doing. Anyway, I love space. I love all that sort of scientific research, whatever it is, but I just don't agree with all this. I just want to know, what is all this private exploration of space about? Always money. Paul Coit after this.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough, against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here's Paul Coit. He's got the sport from last night, and let's get it over with quickly.
OK, then.
Arsenal, Sheffield United.
They were disappointing in the second half, weren't they? Arsenal just scored 1 goal, so let's leave it at that. 1 goal in the second half. OK, so they scored 5 in the first half, but is that the point? Yes, it probably is. But Arsenal were very good, Sheffield United very poor, and Arsenal continue, and they're up there, and who knows, along with Man City and Liverpool.
Yeah, so they're up there, down there, Sheffield United.
Yep.
They're going down. There's absolutely no doubt they're going down.
Yep.
Is there any point changing the manager?
I don't think there is.
Yeah,
he was talking about players. Chris Wilder was talking about players and thinking maybe because he put the young boys on in the second half, and because he just says his players are like broken. And what do you do? And they were really poor. So it's like, what do we do now? Put the kids out. Maybe they'll have a go, because
not
it's just
the first time that they lost 5 goals or so in the first half.
No, plenty of times.
Harry Kane, what's he worried about?
Well, Bayern Munich play Lazio tonight. So is this possibly Harry Kane's only chance of a trophy? It's gone over to Bayern Munich from Spurs. The whole narrative around this was he wants to win something, so he's gone to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga are not doing well. They're 10 points behind Bayer Leverkusen. Now, to put it into context here, Bayern Munich have won the last 11 titles. So it's almost a given that you go to Bayern Munich to win the title, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen this time. And also, now with Lazio, they're 1-0 down from the first leg. So if they go out of the Champions League, obviously that's another trophy. But this is really interesting, is that the only trophy that possibly he could win, and will win, now there's a Bundesliga trophy for the most goals.
Right.
So like the Golden Boot. And the ironic thing is that he's left Spurs, gone to... You never guess what the actual trophy is of. Have a look at this. This is the actual trophy. It's a darn... Look at that. It's a cannon. It's the Arsenal emblem is what he could actually win. So if you score the most goals in the Bundesliga, that is the trophy. And it's pretty much the Arsenal emblem in a trophy. That's not what you want, is it? Just to remind Harry. But the manager, Thomas Tuchel... looks like he is going to be going at the end of the season, but it could actually be earlier than that because Xabi Alonso, who is the manager of Bayer Leverkusen, who's doing so well, it looks like he's being tapped up by Bayern Munich, but also Liverpool would want him to be their manager as well.
OK, my friend, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come, we're talking about why you shouldn't be calling girls cute or sweet. Anyway, it's not me. We've got Claire and Rafe will talk about that after this.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We got one or two things to talk to you about. We have got the Royal Historian Rafe Haidel-Mancou, and we've got Claire Muldoon, and they've got lots of stories making the news today. And Claire, this is about how you would address a younger child, particularly girls.
Yeah, apparently. I've never read so much rubbish, apart from covering the American election at the moment. Calling girls cute and sweet apparently stifles their creativity.
Can I just say, I would call boys cute and sweet as well.
Of course.
Right? So I wouldn't make any distinction on that.
And if you're
a girl was strong and tough, I'd call her strong and tough.
And if you're the manager of Celtic and you had a good interview with a lady journalist, you'd call her a good girl. What's wrong with it? Come on, guys. This is an experiment by Lego, can you believe?
Lego?
Yes. They polled 61,500 parents and children across 36 countries. This marketing company, words like brave, cool, genius and innovative were twice as likely to be attributed to boys, while girls were 7 times more likely to be given the attributes of sweet,
Right, well, obviously
and
this
cute.
is about increasing sales of Lego because obviously girls would be less interested in Lego. I'm more likely to call, my son being one of them, anybody who's got a fascination with Lego, nerdy.
Well, I loved Lego. I had loads of Lego. And in fact...
Stand on it all the time.
My Lego actually was used by my children, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And the thing that really irks me about this is that we have got so much money going into STEM. STEM for girls. Girls study STEM. And we've got more time in our hands to actually encourage girls.
What you mean by STEM?
Science, maths and tech and all of that, computing and stuff, and engineering and maths. So that's what it is. Why then have we got this report coming out now to say that girls, we can't call them cute because it stifles their creativity? They've actually followed girls through to the age of mid-teens. What stifles their creativity is their inability to stand on their own 2 feet, their inability to have independence of thought, and their inability to stand outside peer pressure.
So why is that?
Peer pressure. Social media. These girls are functioning at a lower level when they've got so much more support than they've ever had because of, I would say, peer pressure and social media. It's so sad.
I'd agree, but it's also important just to acknowledge that men and women, boys and girls, are fundamentally different, you know? And the more money you put into these STEM programmes, etc., the less return you're going to get. I mean, look, Scandinavia is the most gender-equal part of the whole world, and what they found was that where they had the least distinction between males and females, the gender roles increased. So girls were more likely to go into nursing and teaching and all of those areas, the more that they were actually introduced to boy subjects. There's a natural inclination here, which, you know, some of it would be nurture, but much of it is nature. And we need to understand that.
Absolutely. And that's why reports like this, I don't think, are helpful in any way, shape or form.
I have a boy and a girl, and whilst when my little boy was little, I'd have called him cute, I think my little girl is the cutest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, she is, Poppy. It's beautiful.
But it's something about a little girl I do think is very, very, very sweet.
It is. And we are. We're amazing. And we should be celebrating.
Britannia, Rafe. We've got Labour talking to us later on this morning.
Can we just go back to Claire's comments on what the NHS, how it's being funded and what it should be funded about? And you said that people who have got difficulty conceiving, that's... correct me if I'm wrong here, Claire, but you basically said that's not an issue for the NHS.
Yes, I did say that.
That's something for you to sort out yourself. Noel says, the comments made by Claire regarding IVF made me feel very sad. Women who desperately want to start a family would have gone through years of turmoil. Why are they not entitled then to any help?
Because it's not your right to have a child.
OK, a lot of people would think it is, but OK. Claire Muldoon, Pauline says, is right about free fertility paid for by the NHS, and she's correct in saying it should be paid for by the recipient. Rob says there should be an opt-out of NHS treatment. I pay £180 a month on national insurance. Think of it as health insurance. Think of the health insurance I could get for that. And, Rafe, that is a very good point, because we have this national insurance and it's not used for health matters. So why are we taxed on it? It's like car tax and whatever. It doesn't go to roads or cars or anything like that. None of these taxes are ring-fenced.
No, actually, I think it'll be a very good thing for a government to actually create hypothecated taxes for things like the National Health Service and other things, so people can actually see how much of their pay packet is actually going to these different areas.
Yeah. Now, Martin says, final word on this, Claire. I agree with Claire. The NHS was never intended for things like boob jobs, sex changes, helping people have children, supplying free dental and health service to anyone who comes here, etc. It was supposed to be essential medical help. Is that more or less what you're saying?
Nye Bevan will be turning in his grave if he knew what was going on. Why would you pay for
anyone to have a baby once they're having their child, you know, delivering their baby? Or what about people who have eaten themselves into a heart attack?
Yeah.
You know, it just becomes a bit of a moral question about whether you're going to treat them or not.
Does it?
Well, basically,
I don't think it is, Isabel.
What's the difference, though, between being free to give birth to a baby on the NHS and being free to be given the first round of IVF if you've struggled for forever? And it's
because it's no one's right to be entitled to be a parent.
Well, why is it somebody's right to be entitled to have a free birth on the NHS?
Because they've become pregnant naturally, and it's it's a whole circle of life. We need to underpin people having children. We need to underpin the ability to have children naturally and help and support families that way.
OK. What about if you break your leg playing rugby or something? You know, you've chosen...
That's an accident. So you turn into accident and emergency. Okay. Clues in the name.
OK. Rule Britannia, Rafe, I can feel you getting hot under the collar on this one already. The Labour culture spokeswoman Thangam Debonair says it can make people feel alienated. And she said she wants culture to be accessible to everyone.
Yes, this comes around once in a while, but why this is important is because this is Labour's culture spokesperson. And say what you want to about the Tories, they at least do defend our national symbols. And I think it's quite a scary glimpse, perhaps, of a future under a Labour government where we won't be able to rely on the government to defend these institutions.
Saying that, Rafe, because the word slave is in that rule book.
Yeah, but that's the other point. We're having our institutions and symbols attacked because of ignorance. Rule Britannia has nothing to do with slavery. Nobody was thinking about Africa when they were writing this. This was all about Britain being the land of liberty compared to the authoritarian regimes that ruled Europe. You know, it was under the jackboots of the Hohenzollerns and the Habsburgs and the Tsars and the Bourbons. And, you know, John Bull, this was the land of beef and liberty. And it was like, don't try your things over here, matey. And Rule Britannia was actually an instruction to Britain to actually go out and rule the waves. And people should be happy we did, because we eventually did rule the waves and ended slavery as a result of it. So I think, you know, it just reminds me of George Orwell, who said that an English intellectual would be more ashamed to stand for God Save the King than to steal from a church poor box. And I think that's what we have here. And China and Russia must be laughing. You know, self-confident nations aren't always demoralising themselves, as we seem to do in the West here. And let me just also say, my favourite opera singer, Jessie Norman, the great black soprano, she said singing Rule Britannia at the last night of the proms was one of the best moments in her life. So if you don't like the song, turn off the TV, don't watch last night, put on a CD of the Red Army Choir.
In any way be associated as being British or anything to do with the establishment, but that's a debate maybe for another day. Great story here in the Star. Happy Res, it's called. Claire.
It is.
Tell us what makes us happy.
Well, because you know what, Eamonn? There's no doom and gloom with Muldoon, and that's what we always say. And at least the Star have started to buy into that. Happy Rays. Do you know the top 10 things to make people smile? Do you know what they are? And I think the four of us should go out and do them all today. Have sun in your face. Well, that might be a bit difficult. Give someone a hug, a relative, hopefully someone that you know, not a random stranger in the street.
Some people pay for that.
Or a text are perfect pick-me-ups. You know, we're living in a world where, you know, people are so angry all of the time. We live in a very divisive society. People can't seem to appreciate another side of a point of view. You're shot down, you're shouted, you're humiliated, especially on social media, and it's very, very difficult to actually stand by what you say, stand by the courage of your convictions, and go along with it. Have a bit of respect.
I think we increasingly need our escapism, don't we? For me, my little kitten, who's now 7 months old, brings me so much joy. He waits for me at the window as I go in the front door.
Oh, you'll never get better love. Unconditional love.
What, from a cat?
Oh, the best.
I thought cats couldn't stand their owners.
He touches noses with me. He nuzzles into me when I'm asleep.
A dog, yes.
Just the most. Brings me joy, dawn till dusk. What about you, Eamonn?
I have a nice little thing on Twitter I subscribe to where I get a daily dose of Frankie Howard and Tommy Cooper and Leonard Rossiter every day. You know, just a minute or two of that, and that usually perks me up for an hour or two at least.
Yes, yeah. So that's your little lift. That's what does it for you. I do find music, I think it's important to listen to music and find music that does nice things to you during the day, and if you don't have that, you're missing something in your life.
Glass of wine?
Oh, yeah, a large gin and tonic. Well, it's not actually.
A brewed cup of tea.
Eamonn's bang on. Number 4, hearing your favourite song, or, you know, whatever, or either on the radio, the start of spring. How lovely is it to see the daffs and the crocuses and all those lovely bulbs really coming up, being smiled at by a stranger. When I first moved to London,
like that.
nearly 27 years ago, it was the most. I could never understand why people didn't look at each other in the street or say good morning or whatever. Even on the tube, everyone looked so angry. Everyone looked so, oh, I really don't want to be here.
Do you smile at strangers?
I do, because they go, there's that nutter.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. I don't know about south of London, but in London itself, there is a different attitude to people being nice to you.
Well, they think they're going to mug you.
The further north you go, that changes.
Yeah.
So you go to the northwest of the country, you go to the northeast of the country, and people are incredibly friendly to you. And I presume that goes up to Scotland. It does go up to Scotland as well.
Apart from the SNP aren't that friendly, so let's park that one there.
Well, it's funny because I mean, if someone smiled at me on the tube, I'd leave the carriage at the next stop. But when I was in Liverpool, I took the metro there, and I didn't know where I was going. I was looking at the map. 3 people separately got up to come over to me to ask if I needed help.
Lovely.
I couldn't believe it.
No, I think it's great. Just approach somebody you don't know, and say, "What about you? How you doing?" And
Top of the morning to you.
Top of the morning.
And also
with the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello, very good to see you on this Tuesday morning. The time approaching 8 o'clock. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Good to have you with us. Leading the news this morning, as the Conservatives face a fresh Rwanda defeat in the House of Lords and a new poll humiliation, will Jeremy Hunt's budget be able to turn things around? GB News reporter Olivia Utley has her analysis.
Yes, Jeremy Hunt has been digging behind the back of the sofa looking for cash to fund tax cuts. But has he found it? Find out more with me very soon.
Thanks, Olivia. Super Tuesday, biggest day of the primary calendar in the race to the White House. But will Donald Trump finally clinch the nomination, or could his rival Nikki Haley surprise everyone? Not really.
New season of Celebrity Big Brother has kicked off. Could the Princess of Wales's uncle spill the beans about her secret health condition?
More and more people living in poverty. Is the state pension enough? It's 156 quid a week. We'll be debating whether it should be raised. 8:20.
And in the sport this morning, Arsenal let themselves down by only scoring 6 against Sheffield United last night. More Formula 1 controversy, and in snooker, John Higgins misses out on the magic 167 break with the Golden Ball.
Finally, a drier week of weather to come, although still some rain to talk about in the forecast. Coming up, all the details very soon.
We've had a lot of good things to talk about this morning. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. gbviews@gbnews.com. We're now one day out from the Chancellor handing down his spring budget. We're rejuvenating the economy and addressing the cost of living crisis. Will have all eyes upon him.
But political pressures are also mounting up. He's got to try and turn the tide in the polls, as Conservative support has now fallen to its lowest level on record, according to Ipsos.
And to top it off, overnight the government has suffered a string of defeats in the House of Lords to its immigration policy, the Rwanda bill.
So ahead of the budget, we've taken to the streets of Cottingham in East Yorkshire and to Glasgow to see what you want from tomorrow's budget.
I'd like to see him listen to the people as well for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
No increase on petrol is a big one, because I live in rural Lincolnshire and I use my car a lot.
They can start by spending it on helping homelessness.
Reduce the taxes and
try to support people to open new businesses.
A more generous housing market would be great. That would be lovely.
Like healthcare as well.
Raise your tax allowance because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
Well, joining us now, our political correspondent Olivia Utley with her analysis of all of this. Good morning, Olivia.
Good morning. Yes, Jeremy Hunt has been desperately looking for some cash, essentially, to fund tax cuts. There is now a consensus on the Conservative benches from left to right of the party that they need to dramatically cut taxes before the next election if they stand any hope of avoiding a really catastrophic defeat. The tax burden is still at its highest for 70 years, and that's under a Conservative government. Jeremy Hunt has about £12 billion of fiscal headroom, and he's looking for another £9 billion to afford the tax cuts that he's planning. Part of that would involve cutting state spending after the next election. That looks like something he's likely to do, cutting down the size of the civil service. But tomorrow, the options seem to be he will either cut national insurance or he'll cut income tax, either by 1 or 2p. Now, a cut in income tax, which would benefit everyone, including pensioners, is seen as the more sort of politically potent thing to do. And it sounds as though Rishi Sunak is pushing pressure, has put pressure on Jeremy Hunt to do that. But a cut to national insurance tax is A, cheaper for the Treasury. National insurance is only paid by workers. And B, because of that, is less inflationary. So a cut to national insurance sounds like it's what Jeremy Hunt would like to do. It sounds as though Jeremy Hunt might have won that fight, and it could be that national insurance is going to be cut tomorrow. That would also fit in with the sort of ideology behind the Jeremy Hunt budgets and spring statements that we've seen in recent times. He likes these back-to-work budgets. He wants things that will benefit workers. He wants incentives to get into the workplace. But, of course, if it doesn't affect pensioners, if it doesn't benefit pensioners, would that be a sensible move for the Conservatives ahead of an election? Because, as we all know, the grey vote is particularly powerful. Those are the people who actually turn up to the polling stations.
Yeah, and there's always the question, and Eileen puts it so well in her email to us this morning, about fiscal drag and why he won't tackle that. I guess it's simply not sexy enough, Olivia. If the Chancellor wants to have an impact before the election, he should A, raise the tax threshold so that everyone has more money in their pockets, and B, lower the rate of VAT to encourage people to spend more of their money and boost the economy. It sounds so simple. I just don't know why those measures aren't ever really adopted. But I guess it's a harder sell at the ballot box, isn't it, moving the personal allowances rather than cutting a couple of pennies off. But, you know, we're not stupid. I think most people could work that out.
Thanks, Olivia. Thank you very much indeed. The time's 6 minutes past 8. Tomorrow evening, there's going to be a budget special here on GB News, live from Whitehaven. And you can be part of the audience. Michelle Dewberry, Nigel Farage hosting. And they'll be dissecting the budget live. So if you want to get involved in that one, gbnews.com for more details.
Right, we're going to cross the pond now. It is the big Super Tuesday in the States in the race to the White House. Voters in 15 states and 1 US territory will choose their candidates for president.
So could you be facing a 2020 election rematch, or Nikki Haley, will she have any sort of result against Donald Trump? No, she won't. But anyway, joining us now, former Nevada Republican Party chairwoman, Amy Tarkanian. Amy, sorry, I just couldn't see your name there. So, Amy, we mentioned Nikki Haley there. She's no chance of doing anything, has she really?
I love your enthusiasm. No, unfortunately, and I spoke with a producer prior, and she actually summed it up quite nicely, calling it the not so Super Tuesday, because it does seem that Donald Trump is going to take the majority, if not all, of the delegates that will be allocated. There is roughly a third that will be handed out of the 1,215 needed to clinch the nomination on Super Tuesday. And so, you know, I think that this would be a sign, if Nikki doesn't do so well, to finally step aside, unfortunately. Now, it is interesting, though, because he is going out and telling people that he doesn't want any more Romney Republicans to be involved in the party. And they've had state party and county party officials remove people from the Republican Party if they are not in lockstep with Donald Trump and if they actually question anything dealing with Donald Trump. And so, I don't know what they plan on doing for a general scenario while they are removing individuals from the party system. But so far in the primary, that's where we're at. So you've got now roughly 4 in 10 Republicans who aren't happy that Trump's going to be the nominee, but here we are.
And I presume you're one of those. I know that in the past you've spoken to us and been a critic of Donald Trump, and yet the way has really been cleared for him, hasn't it? Yesterday, that landmark ruling from the Supreme Court, described as the most momentous court decision in terms of elections since Gore versus Bush 24 years ago.
Right. And I think that was a huge mistake, actually. There were 3 states that tried to remove him from their ballot system. And he has been indicted for a number of situations. But the fact that he has not been found guilty of insurrection and then to systematically remove him from their ballot system, I don't think that was wise. And I think it probably it actually did more harm than good. I think that now people believe that he is being politically persecuted now across the board, as opposed to just looking at each scenario at its own situation. And so now you have people digging their heels in saying that we're going to support him no matter what. And there are some people who are crazy enough that will say, we'll still support him if he's behind bars. And I actually have the Democrats to blame for this, because Biden is the best situation for President Trump to become our president once again. This man is clearly falling apart, and Kamala Harris is not helping him at all. The 2 of them together are tanking in the polls within their own party, and they're also hurting just within demographics that usually would support Democrats. They're upside down with Muslim Arabs, they're upside down with Hispanics, and like I just mentioned, they're upside down with their own party. And so this truly is Trump's best scenario.
What about interference in the election? I saw yesterday the first AI images of President Trump surrounded by a group of black men, a group that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily associate him as being sort of popular amongst. You think more of the sort of Obama demographic there. How much is AI going to be involved in this, and perhaps foreign involvement, and how much can you do to protect against that?
It's a huge concern, because there was even a robocall that went out in one of the states that emulated President Biden's voice. And so I think we're in new territory here. And I would hope that Congress is actually fully focused on trying to tackle this. But this is a whole new area that we're having to deal with. And yes, there are images that are being passed around, even as jokes, showing the 2 of them, looking like they're best friends and hanging out together. So I think we're in for a whole new area that's probably going to cause a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. OK, Amy Tarkanian, former Nevada Republican Party chairwoman. Thanks for your time. Just finally, would you vote for Trump if he does get the nomination?
No.
Will you vote for Biden, or just not vote at all?
I don't think I will vote for Biden. I will probably vote third party.
Ooh, interesting. Well, there's a whole nother interview in that another time. Amy, for now, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. This is what we've got for you. A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 10-year-old girl was found dead in Sandwell. This is in the West Midlands. This woman's 33 years of age, and she's understood to be known to the girl. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at the scene. Jack with the latest. Good morning, Jack.
Yeah, so West Midlands Police confirming that around 12:10 yesterday, a child with injuries was found and addressed here in Rowley Regis and confirmed dead at the scene. The police also confirmed that a 33-year-old woman who they believe and understand to be known to the girl has been arrested and taken into police custody for questioning. The investigation still very much in an early stage, but continuing around as members of what has been described as a close-knit community now come together to pay their tributes to this girl. West Midlands Ambulance Service also confirming yesterday that they'd sent 2 ambulances and a paramedic officer here to the scene, but it was clear upon their arrival that nothing could be done to save the girl, and that 10-year-old was confirmed deceased at the scene.
Thank you, Jack.
France has become the first country in the world to explicitly include the right to abortion in its constitution. The move enshrines women's guaranteed freedom to abortion, and it passed with an overwhelming 780 votes to 72. It was greeted by a standing ovation during a historic vote in Versailles.
The government has suffered a string of defeats to its immigration policy, the Rwanda bill in the House of Lords. That was last night. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more being voted on tomorrow. Rishi Sunak previously warned the Lords against frustrating what he termed the will of the people by hampering the passage of his Safety of Rwanda.
We're going to check on the weather in a moment, but we were talking a little bit earlier about how there was a solar storm yesterday, which meant that there were spectacular sightings of the Northern Lights from Devon all the way to Scotland. So if you did get a glimpse of it yesterday, something I've never seen, and it's on my bucket list. I'm very jealous of lots of people at the Stonehenge all the way up, the beaches across the northeast.
And you saw things like this? So you did. This is what you saw around the country. Oh, we don't have it. No, we just thought we would tease you with that. Sometimes we have things, sometimes we don't. But anyway, so it was good to talk about that.
Yeah, there was a solar storm. Will there be a storm here on planet Earth? Here's Aidan McGibbon.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
Very shortly, we're going to be talking about the pension, and if you get it, it's either 156 quid, or for some reason, if you join after the 6th of April 2016, it's 203 quid, which strikes me as very unfair, why one is lower than the other, depending on when you were born. But we're going to talk about it. Should it be increased? Should it be scrapped?
But for now, we're going to talk about the Great British Giveaway. Perhaps you're a pensioner and could really do with a £12,345 boost. That's in cash. There'll also be lots of other goodies, including...
There are, and I think including that being tax-free.
Yeah.
It's how it could all be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 £245 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good news, very good news, and very good luck to you if you're entering that. After the break, we're asking,
should we raise the state pension? We'll be debating it after this. Stay tuned to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, that's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Right, well, research shows that the state pension is deemed insufficient by 4 in 5 people in the country for basic living needs.
Well, as well as this, 18% of Brits aged between 60 and 64 now live in what's considered deep poverty.
Now, due to this, the Chancellor is still planning to introduce a pot for life for pension savers, even though experts have warned it could hike costs for low earners. So we're asking the question, should the state pension be raised? Joining us now, former Labour MP Dennis McShane, who believes we should raise the pension, and political commentator Jack Rowlett, who believes that we should not. Dennis, the first thing I want to ask you is, here's what I don't understand looking into this. Why are there two types of pension? Why, depending on when you're born, you'll get 50 quid less than somebody who has joined the state pension in the last 5 years or so?
I mean, I'm trying to learn Greek. I think that would be a lot easier than understanding how our pension system arises. I've got my own point of view, but that's for Electoral, not this morning. It's not done viciously or meanly. Basically, when you enter, that changes it. When they upgrade the pension, it may not cover everybody. So that's that particular stat you've seized. But at the end of the day, that's quite a small difference. Our basic problem is we have never, ever put enough money, obliged employers, obliged ourselves.
Yes.
That's the most important thing to save. And those savings actually are a form of investment that grow all the other European economies. But of course, we mustn't learn anything from Europe now.
So, Jack, the older you will be becoming, I think your opinion on this may change, my friend, but why are you against not raising the pension pot?
So I think in the UK at the moment, we have a demographic crisis, which is only getting worse. We know over the next 25 years, 25% of the population are going to be over 65. Currently, we're kind of rationing the fact that we can't really afford the current state pension system by continuing to kind of creep back the state pension age, which I think is grossly unfair, because current working people who are paying for the state pension through taxation are not going to be seeing the same benefits that they're currently paying for. But also, if you're a richer pensioner, you're going to be getting a state handout for much longer than if you're a poorer pensioner, because life expectancy is much lower for poorer people than richer people. So by continuing to push back that age, it's grossly unfair. I think what we need to do is, rather than kind of scrapping the state pension or reducing it, we need to be means testing it instead, because currently, whether you're a rich pensioner or whether you're a pensioner who's struggling to heat your home and feed yourself, you're getting that same handout from the state. That is absolutely ridiculous. If we means tested the state pension and said we're only going to give it to retirees with assets of less than £1 million, it would save the government £25 billion a year. Now, you could put that money towards cutting taxes or assisting working people, the people who are driving growth in the UK, and increasing the state pension for those pensioners who are in poverty, that 18% that you mentioned, who really need support from the government. So I think the current system, it doesn't work at all, it's unsustainable, and it's grossly unfair.
But I suppose, Dennis, the counter-argument to that would be that would force a lot of people to sell their homes, which is, not an election winner. It's not a popular thing. And at the end of the day, these wealthy pensioners, they may be in a minority amongst pensioners, but they are an important and significant part of the vote, are they not?
Liz, might I gently and politely ask Jack? He's very, very strong. It was a very powerful argument. How old are you, Jack?
I'm 23.
You're 33. Whoa.
23.
So, 23?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's wonderful. You look really, really dynamic at that age. Let me tell you, as you get a bit older, you'll be paying taxes, a lot of taxes, because to rebuild this country after the last 10 years, everybody's going to have to pay more after the disaster of the Liberal Democrat and Tory economic ideology. And you'll find that you'll be very, very hard to persuade everybody older than you to pay a lot more so you can live in a better country. So I wouldn't actually means test pensioners, because means tests are mean. That's why the word is there. Well, not quite. And they're deeply unpopular. And these are all guaranteed ways, I don't know which party you represent or are close to, of losing any election on that basis.
Jack?
Well, I don't represent any party. I'm simply looking at the current situation, looking at the fact that it's unsustainable and unfair. And I think we are seeing taxes raised to a record high. We are seeing downward pressure on growth. And we know that our current welfare spending, of which the state pension is a huge proportion, we need to be growing the economy at about 3% a year in order for that to be sustainable. And we're nowhere near that at the moment.
You say you don't represent any party, and absolutely fair enough, you don't have to answer this, but are any of the parties speaking to the young, the working population, as you say, on this, or are they all very aware that the people who by and large turn out to vote are of the older years who stand to gain from the system as it is with the triple lock?
Well, I certainly don't think any of the major parties at the moment are speaking to the working age population on this issue. They're all committed to keeping the triple lock, which just doesn't feel fair when you have, 1 in 4 pensioners are millionaires, when you have working families having seen their average annual income fall by £375 a year since 2010, but pensioners have seen theirs increase by £510 a year. And when we see that nearly a third of children in this country are in poverty, whilst if you're a pensioner, you're much less likely to be in poverty than the average Brit. So we need to be focusing our efforts on those pensioners who are still in poverty.
About figures that aren't really relevant there, but what would you say?
Well, very simply, Jack, you're quite right. There are huge discrepancies because we're the most unequal society.
But I'd say try living in 156 quid a week,
exactly.
Jack. That's what I'd say.
And pensions, 20%, that's 1 in 5 pensioners, don't finish the week with enough to pay for their food bills. They can't even dream of running a car, which if you're far in the countryside is a form almost of being trapped there. And you certainly can't go on holiday or buy presents for your grandchildren. Honestly, Jack, I mean, don't differentiate by saying every pensioner can afford to become even poorer. I agree with you entirely. Don't get me wrong. We've not dealt with care problems. We've not looked at much better examples in Europe. Germany, for example, there was a consensus in 1995 to tax everybody, rich and poor, 4% to pay exclusively for old age care. Now,
I'd love to do the interview again with you in 50 years' time, Jack. We've got to leave it there, my friend. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Still to come, we've got Claire Muldoon, Rafe Hadel-Mancu as well. They're back with making the headlines right after this.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Sadiq Khan, 6.3 million on a virtue signal, load of lines. Why is he spending the people's money in this way? And why is nobody saying anything? I want to hear from Suzanne Hall, the potential Conservative candidate, or Howard Cox, the potential Reform candidate who could potentially take this off Sadiq Khan. Why are they not speaking? This is ridiculous.
Well, it was sprung on everybody. Did you know about that?
I didn't know about it.
Nobody knows. So they're spending this money. They're spending £6.3 million, and no one knew about it. Where's the press? Where are the public consultations? No one knew. I think it's a good idea to rename the train lines, because all these train lines are there are like 4 of them, 6 of them, whatever, and they're all going all these different directions. And you tell someone to come, and you don't even know the name.
Yeah, but 6.3 million. Listen, if you want to give me 6.3 million to come up with some virtue signalling lines, I'd like to know which advertising agency he employed to do this, how long it took him, and why he's even done it in the first place. Why has he done this?
He has done this with the virtue signalling because he's part of T-World. He's Rishi Sunak. It's this whole concept is every inclusiveness. There is no country. Nobody's English. Our own history is bad. Not my history, but whatever. The English history is bad. And it's a denial of history. It's Orwellian or something. Yeah. Not that I know about.
I think it's an absolute absurdity that Sadiq Khan should be doing that. He's got a knife crime epidemic, a crime epidemic, people stealing watches off people walking down the street.
Yes.
You've got the burglary at an all-time high. London, a lot of people are put off by it. And this is what he spent £6.3 million on.
This could have been a bit
to speak as to why.
He doesn't need to speak. People need to speak out and say, well, why didn't we know about this? But the idea, can I say something to you, Nana? The idea is right. It's like, for example, take the Northern Line. You know, there are 6 Northern Lines.
6 Northern Lines.
6 different Northern Lines, maybe more now, because one goes from Mill Hill East to Mill Hill.
But this was the overground he was
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We're going through the papers. We're joined by the Royal Broadcaster and historian Rafe Hadel-Mancu and the broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. We've been talking a lot about things like shoplifting and indeed burglaries, Claire.
Yep.
And this is the news that, figures reveal police failed to solve a single burglary in nearly half of all neighbours. We actually covered this story yesterday, but we'll briefly touch on it now, Claire.
Well, I wanted to tie in as well with Gove's levelling up, because there was reports as well that 20% of the towns and cities that he wanted to be levelled up actually have only hit the mark. That's nothing. I mean, we keep hearing, police and crime commissions are going to do this, we're going to do that. It'll be safe for everybody. We're recruiting police staff. They will, attend every burglary.
They attend it, but they're not investigating it.
Exactly. And the reason they do attend only is because of insurance purposes, to give you an insurance number. We keep talking, we keep prevaricating, we keep going on with the rhetoric of policing, community policing. But I'll tell you this, if we had bobbies on the beat, if we had community policing, our lives would be so much easier, and they'd be friendlier as well. We'd know our neighbours, they'd know their neighbours, they'd know what was going on, they would know...
Money, it's all down to money again. It's politicians that decide
I think it's politics, actually, more than money.
But there's an important point here. We were promised these 20,000 new police officers. I think what people don't realise is we have the youngest police force ever, and the most inexperienced detectives who don't simply have the skills or experience to solve these crimes too. That's an equally important
they're not retaining
problem.
these guys, Ray, then they don't have the experience. That's the whole thing.
But there was a great cartoon in I think it was the Times the other day, where the policeman attended to the burglary. The police was a tip, and the policeman said, "So you've watched enough crime drama, you solve it." I think there's a lot of armchair detectives. A lot of people think, well, and we saw that with the horrible the horrible death of Nicola, who drowned in water. Awful.
Rafe, can we talk about the return of George Galloway? Apart from his quoting of Shania Twain, how much of a problem do you think he might be? We saw him yesterday being sworn into Parliament. He said that with his Workers' Party, he could field 90 candidates in the general election.
So this is page 8 of the Daily Express. Fears as Galloway is sworn as an MP. There's a fear, of course, that the firebrand orator will stoke division as well as tensions re Gaza. And I'd say some of those fears are well placed. I mean, he's just said that the next election will be about Muslims. I gave a TV interview on this on the weekend, and George Galloway replied to me, and then he blocked me before I could actually reply. But I actually was saying much the same thing that he is saying. His divisive, ethnic and religiously based politics, I think, is the future for politics in large parts of this country. Eamonn, you'll know very well what sectarianism did to Northern Ireland, and I'm afraid it's that template of tribalism that he's going to be trying to use for other areas which have the same sort of demographics as Rochdale, and we should be worried about that, because no longer policies don't matter any longer. It's what tribe you're with and what your foreign policy is about Israel.
Populist identity politics, but I do think he's going to shake things up in the Houses of Parliament, and I think that's needed as well, to be honest with you, because it's very stale, still very male and still very pale. And George, the great orator, of course, when he met with Saddam Hussein, was it? When he described his indefatigability. Try saying that after you've had a few.
Indeed.
But, I think he will shake things up. And let's just wait and see.
At least he can't wear his hat in the House of Commons. That's one good thing there.
That was wonderful. I saw, without that hat on.
Goodness.
There's a big headline over the front page of the Telegraph today. I can't see where the Telegraph's... Here it is.
There you are.
And this is German army leaks just the tip of the iceberg. Russia sees Scholz as a useful idiot and may have intercepted more secrets, say sources. Explain more, Rafe.
Yes, well, you know, back in the 1980s, a British spy said that if you want the Kremlin to take something seriously, all you have to do is give it to the Germans, tell them it's top secret, and the Russians will have it by the morning. And it seems as if not much has changed on those lines. I mean, this is the worst security breach since the Cold War, some are calling this. I mean, this basically was the German, high-level officers having a discussion on something called WebEx, which is just like Zoom. Someone phoned in from Singapore on their mobile phone to access this, where British secrets putting British troops at risk were divulged. And of course, the timing of this release by Russia is deliberately designed to cause maximum division amongst the European allies. Russia sees Germany as the weakest link in NATO. It's more interested, actually, in business deals with China and Russia than it is with security. We saw how it closed its nuclear plants and made itself entirely dependent upon Russia, which already compromised its foreign policy. So I think there's a lot of questions for Germany.
Cut across. You've got the business minister standing by, and we're going to be speaking to Greg Hands after this short break, and then returning to Rafe and Claire for their views of stories that are making the news today.
"2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about, anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah,
and
also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean...
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say that, will they?
Because
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
Well, let's return to our top story this morning. One day away from the Chancellor's big budget moment, and, well, will he be able to rejuvenate the economy and address the cost of living crisis and perhaps turn some of those polls around? Joining us now to talk about it all is the Business Minister, Greg Hands, MP. Good morning to you. It's a big ask, isn't it, for Jeremy Hunt to turn things around? If you take a look at the latest polling, the worst polling yet for the Conservatives. I mean, they're used to seeing these kinds of figures, but 26, 27 percentage points behind in the polls. Ouch. Got to do something tomorrow.
Well, look, we'll have to wait and see what's actually in the budget tomorrow. But I think the economy is turning a corner. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the Bank of England recently. And I think that will provide a backdrop for the Chancellor setting out where he's seeing taxation and public spending tomorrow. But we won't have long to wait.
OK, well, we can talk endlessly about the budget, but I feel like given that this is this time tomorrow, we'll talk about other things this morning. Rwanda, back a bit of a headache for the Prime Minister. He was hoping to have this all done and dusted by the 20th of March. The Lords, predictably, not happy with your bill. And, well, how are you going to get that through Parliament with these amendments from the Lords? A lot of your MPs voted for that, absolutely holding their nose, not happy with a lot of what they conceded to. These amendments aren't going to be approved by MPs, are they? And that means what's going to happen to these flights?
Well, look, first of all, it's not unusual for a government to be defeated in the House of Lords. It's been going on for some decades now. But I think we'll have to have a look at the legislation as it comes back from the Lords, which will happen soon, and laying out exactly the government's approach. But if I might say, I think this is very, very important legislation. And I think the British people are right behind this. This is all about taking effective action against illegal migration, taking effective action against the people smugglers, the people who are profiting from human misery, making sure there's a deterrent effect by being able to return people or send people to a safe third country, in this case Rwanda. That is what this is all about. I think the British people are behind what we're doing. The House of Commons is backing what we're doing. So, I think on that basis we'll have to see how it comes back from the Lords, but I think the British people want to see Parliament getting on with delivering this.
Human misery, Minister, really is the cost of living crisis for so many people, and they simply just care about their own lives and how much money they will have in their pockets or purses and whatever. What can I say? But, there's one of the proposals that to tax taxi fares, put 20% VAT on taxi fares around the country, business class tickets on airplanes, to tax those as well. Whether these things are true or not, and you're going to say to me, we'll have to wait until tomorrow. But what I'm simply saying is, you guys in government, you just don't seem to get the message, do you? People are absolutely creaking, they're breaking at the knees, and they're saying, get off our backs.
Well, I think what people do recognise is that the government intervened well and correctly over recent years, for example, during the pandemic, in terms of the supporting people to remain in employment, the fact the government paid a big part of people's energy bills over the last couple of winters. I think people support that. That is why there's been an increase in public spending. But, as I said earlier, the economy is now turning a corner, and that then sets us up nicely to be able to afford things like tax cuts. But do bear in mind that we've already got the tax cut, which kicked in January, at the end of January, the 2% reduction in national insurance, which delivers a £450 tax cut for the average worker on £35,000 a year. So there's already tax cuts that have come in. We'll have to see what else the Chancellor brings us tomorrow.
I wasn't talking about tax cuts, I was talking about tax increases, which are being heavily rumoured. But the thing is, and I take your point about keeping people in employment during the pandemic and whatever, and if people do recognise how kind and benevolent the government was during that time, why did they repay you with a 27% deficit behind Labour in the polls?
Well, I think, if I might, I think we'll have to wait and see what people think at the time of the election later this year. That is the poll that really matters. And I think once the people see where is Rishi Sunak wanting to take the country for a full first term as our Prime Minister, then I think the polls may reflect something rather different. We also, of course, have some very important elections coming up in about 8 weeks' time for the London Mayor, for the West Midlands Mayor, for Teesside and so on, as well as important council elections, Police and Crime Commissioner elections. So there's some important elections coming up in just a couple of months' time as well, where we will see how people actually vote.
Speaking of how people actually vote, George Galloway won resoundingly in Rochdale last week, considered a bit of a firebrand. He has said that this election is going to be, and I quote, all about Muslims. And yet the Conservatives, as we see on the front of the Times this morning, divided over the new definition of extremism. And we've seen in recent weeks the row over failing, or whatever you may see of it, to call out Islamophobia. Does the Conservative Party have a problem with Islamophobia, with Muslims?
No, I don't think we do. And actually, if I might, there haven't actually been any proposals published yet. The Prime Minister announced on Friday in his address at Downing Street that extremism is something that the country does need to tackle. We've seen a rise in extremism in recent months, and I think we do need to get to grips with that. I think the election of George Galloway is reflective of that rise in extremism. So I think that is, if you like, is the question in front of us. How do we tackle that extremism? And I think you'll see government announcements are forthcoming from the Community Secretary and from the Prime Minister as to how this is going to be tackled. But we shouldn't underestimate the degree of the problem that faces us. The election of George Galloway, you mentioned, was actually a massive failure on the part of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party in effectively having to disown their candidate due to comments that were widely viewed as being anti-Semitic. And, you know, Keir Starmer said that he had got rid of this problem in the Labour Party. And that, of course, has turned out not to be the case. And this is somebody who wants to run the country, and he can't even seem to run his own party.
Mr. Hands, thank you very much indeed. Greg Hands is the Business Minister. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you. We're back to Claire.
Yeah, some reaction, I guess, from both of you. First of all, Rafe, what did you think of what Greg Hands had to say this morning?
Well, interesting that he said the economy is turning the corner when we're actually technically in recession at the moment.
Tomorrow, it's always, isn't it?
But I'm a historian, and it's been 2 years since the Rwanda plan was announced. Not a single person has been sent to Rwanda, and future historians are going to be utterly bewildered that this government hung so much of its reputation and credibility on a gimmick, and a gimmick without much chance of ever actually succeeding. And I don't think any planes are going to go off before the general election. And I just think it's remarkable that they're still just stuck to this silly scheme.
I think it's interesting, Claire, that we look at this budget tomorrow and the media try and hype us up into some sort of huge expectation. There's nothing I've heard that's exciting me in it.
No, and it's interesting to hear from the Business Minister. You would think a Business Minister would have a vista of, you know, things they would deliver. You would think he would have objections he was going to meet. Everything was just, well, we need to wait for tomorrow. We need to wait for tomorrow. It's Keir Starmer's fault. Wait for tomorrow. Come on, enough. You know, let's live. Give us the stuff that we need to know. Give us the information. Stop politicising every single soundbite and speak plain English and tell us what you're going to do, what your plan is and what you can do to help us all.
Right, a couple of things I want to talk about before 9 o'clock. Let's talk about poor housing, Claire. Poor housing is a factor in deaths of 55 children.
Yeah, 55 children have died in recent years for living in temporary accommodation. That's just appalling.
Well, it is appalling. And the thing that amazes me is how come somebody in government is writing cheques for a lot of these people living in this rental accommodation. And in this rental accommodation, you've got blue mould, black mould, brown mould, all over everything. Does no one ever inspect where they're actually placing people and where they're paying their money?
Clearly not. Clearly not. There's often no tables in these institutions. There's no cots for children.
It's damp. It's horrendous.
It's no way.
And people talk about landlords, and it's that Dickensian image that you would have of an awful rancid landlord, Scrooge type thing, and that's exactly what has happened. Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
Does it tie into the whole debate about the state pension that we were having a little bit earlier, Rafe? I mean, we talk about the increase, and I think it's at least double the number of children living in families below the poverty line, much more than there are of state pension age, and yet there is this enshrined triple lot with 55 kids dying in mould. That's exactly Dickensian conditions.
Exactly. I mean, when I was young, everyone talked about pensioner poverty. That's long gone for a lot. Not for everybody, of course, but I mean, as an entire demographic.
But you've not got some kid on today talking about millionaire pensioners. You hear this all the time, and nobody's taking into account the extra costs they have, how they going to pay for their hair and all that sort of
But the scandal is actually our housing stock. You know, we have some of the worst housing stock in Europe, and it's basically just going back to that sort of 1970s rising...
Slums. Do you know the other thing that really irks me? People take better care of their pets in this country than they do children and families. It's awful.
But that's really out of their hands. It's in your control to look after your pet. You can look after your children, but you can't look after the mould on the ceiling and the walls.
But the fact is, people shouldn't be in temporary accommodation.
No, that's absolutely true. But there is not a care, and I put it to each one of these government ministers, they don't care. They don't care. They do nothing about it, and that applies to Labour, the Lib Dems, and the whole lot of them, and the local councils and local authorities. They do not invest, particularly in class social housing as well. And then the other thing, and this migrant situation does not go away. I will repeat this again. I went to go out in Belfast over the weekend, and there were 15 hotels that do not exist, 15 eating houses that do not exist because they've been accommodated, they've been taken over and given to migrants.
But can I just say, in half-term, I was away in Holland, and we went to visit some friends about 45 minutes south of Amsterdam in a little quiet village on a lake or town, and they had a barge full of migrants, local community also up in arms about it, all the identical problems that we have here. We've seen the clashes in the Netherlands. It's not a problem that's unique to the United Kingdom. Is it the challenge of our era? Is it soluble? Is it solvable?
No, stop listening to people who say we've got to provide a home for the rest of the world. We don't. We don't.
Let's
just finish on cigars. If you like a cigar yourself?
I do. I enjoy 2 Partagas E2s per week. A nice...
Is that the ones that are rolled on the thighs of a virgin Colombian?
Yes, but you should see what she looks like. But yeah, so this article, another unintended consequence of lockdown. 3% of 18-year-olds now smoke cigars, pipes and shisha pipes, which I find quite remarkable. Doesn't say how often, but there's been sort of a 350% increase. There are only 151,000.
When I was at school, so many teachers smoked pipes. In the class, Mr. Riley, our geography teacher, he would just smoke his pipe, walk around the classroom smoking his pipe. You never see anybody smoking pipes.
Well, I smoke a pipe once in a while, but it's just too much hassle to keep it alight. That's why I prefer a cigar, which I find more relaxing, with a nice Chianti and some Nina Simone or some Ella Fitzgerald. That's my perfect evening all settled there. Who needs company when you have Ella?
Sherlock Holmes was a pipe smoker.
He was indeed.
Yeah, anybody else we can think of?
Cigars, I'm thinking Winston Churchill.
My son, who's 20 tomorrow,
Freud,
he likes
your son?
He got
who's
for his
that terrible Instagrammer or whatever he is, Andrew Tate.
Oh God!
I bet that's behind the rise.
No, seriously,
smoking cigars. Yeah, why else would it be?
Does he smoke cigars?
Yes.
Michael Jordan and others. But actually, this came in also at the same time that menthol cigarettes were banned. So there might be some connection with that as well.
Guys, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
On
a
cigar tomorrow for his birthday.
I will.
Happy birthday to him. And good morning, Aidan McGivern.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, western and southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar. sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
Morning, it's fast approaching 9 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 5th of March. It's lovely to have your company right here on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
I hope your day is going well. This is what we've got for you in the next half hour. As the Conservatives face a fresh Rwanda defeat in the House of Lords and a new poll humiliation, it's an all-time low. Will Jeremy Hunt's budget turn things around?
Super Tuesday, it is the biggest day of the primary calendar in the race to the White House. But will Trump finally clinch the nomination, or could Nikki Haley surprise everyone?
Right, last night, new season of Celebrity Big Brother. Could the Princess of Wales's uncle let a few cats out of the bag?
Yeah, all of that happening as a new photograph emerges of the Princess of Wales, but it's very much unauthorised, so yet another headache for Kensington Palace. More details shortly.
Finally, a drier week of weather to come, although still some rain to talk about in the forecast. Coming up, all the details very soon.
OK, it is our top story this morning. One day to go till the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, will be handing down his spring budget with the hope of rejuvenating the economy and addressing the ongoing cost of living crisis.
Politically, the pressure is on to turn the tide in the polls. A poll yesterday showing Conservative support falling to its lowest level on record.
And to top that off and add insult to injury, overnight the government suffered a string of defeats in the House of Lords to its flagship immigration policy, the Rwanda Bill.
Right, so budget tomorrow. Ahead of that, we've taken to the streets of Cottingham. Cottingham's in East Yorkshire, and also to Glasgow to see what you want from the budget.
I'd like to see them listen to the people as well for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
No increase on petrol is a big one, because I live in rural Lincolnshire and I use my car a lot.
They can start by spending it on helping homelessness.
Reduce the taxes and try to support the people to open new businesses.
A more generous housing market would be great. That would be lovely.
Like healthcare as well.
Raise your tax allowance because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
Well, joining us now is our political editor, Christopher Hope. Good morning to you, Christopher. What chance is there, do you think, that the Chancellor will be listening to any of those concerns, or has he got to try and please the wing of his party that are calling for these much-wanted tax cuts?
Yeah, he's trying to balance, isn't he, these two wings of the party, those mainly in the south who want tax cuts, those in the north want more spending on levelling up. I think he was caught by that on our visit to Darlington with him when he was asking what did they want to see in Darlington, and they wanted more money spent on levelling up and in the areas. And what about tax cuts, he said, almost plaintively. And I think that's part of the problem. He's trying to balance these two wings which gave them that huge majority back in 2019. I've been looking at my history books today for you both, Isabel and Eamonn. I note that when he was Chancellor just 2 short years ago, at the same budget, he said he'll be cutting income tax by 1p in 2024 before the election. That was this budget happening tomorrow. I wonder whether he'll be pressuring Jeremy Hunt, now the Chancellor, to cut income tax by 1p. It seems to be that, or maybe a cut of 2p in national insurance. That's the language from the weekend we heard from the Chancellor. He wants to reward workers, and that means a cut on NIC's national insurance. But will he go ahead with that? That's certainly a less inflationary measure, because few of us notice it. 1p is a headline measure and maybe more inflationary. Other measures, he'll probably reform non-DOMs. Fuel duty won't go up by 5p per litre, thank goodness for many people. But otherwise, quite a limited budget we're expecting tomorrow.
Christopher, I mean, my math's rubbish. What do I know? But is 1p going to make a difference to my life? Is 2p going to... What would 2p... If he came and said, I'm cutting income tax by 2p, what does that mean to all of us?
It's several hundred pounds off your tax bill for the average worker. But the point is, it shows a direction of travel. Now, many people think there'll be a second budget, probably in September, ahead of what we think will be the November election. And that might be the bigger one. We are still in recession, don't forget. And the headroom is a contested space. Can you afford to do this? £9 billion the cost of cutting national insurance. Can you afford to do that? It's based on a guess that you might have a falling debt in 4 years' time. It's very complicated, really, and it's twiddling around when we are basically got a huge bill left over from the COVID pandemic and also the energy shock. So not easy, Eamonn and Isabel.
Yeah, well, we saw him at the weekend, didn't we? What they call sort of rolling the pitch, basically managing expectations and saying that he wouldn't do anything drastic. Yeah. And people say, well, surely there's going to be a rabbit out of the hat. But I would put it to you, Christopher, he needs a bit more than that. He needs dead cat strategy to stop us looking at what's going on in the Lords with this defeat on the Rwanda Bill. There'll be more votes on that tomorrow evening on the same day. And we've also got this terrible Ipsos poll for the Conservatives. They surely need something to perk up the headlines.
Let's go to Jonathan Ashworth on this and get his reaction to those very questions. Chris, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth there. Good morning, Jonathan. You heard what Isabel had to say about, I mean, basically how boring. You must be dancing in the streets at how dull and boring and uninventive any leaks about this budget seem to be so far.
Well, I'm not dancing in the streets because fundamentally, after 14 years of the Conservatives, people are paying more in tax, They're paying more on their mortgage, they're paying more in the shops, wages have been squeezed. And what are people getting in return? Precious little. The NHS is on its knees with record waiting lists. Everyone's waiting longer for treatment. You can't get to see a GP. Crime goes unsolved. Our criminal justice system makes a snail look fast. Our children are in schools, often with roofs falling in. It's why I think now, after 14 years of the Conservatives, it really is time for change. But I think that opportunity for change is coming, because I think there's going to be a May general election. Lots of gossip swirling around in this place about a May general election. And I think Rishi Sunak, and this is my demand for Rishi Sunak, I'm sure he's watching GB News this morning, my demand to Rishi Sunak is name the date, give people certainty. Because like, if businesses who want to invest in the UK economy, they need that certainty. So name the date. Everyone thinks there's going to be a May general election. Give us the date, and let's give the British people the opportunity for the change that they need.
But Jonathan, if there was to be a May general election, surely this would have to be the budget to end all budgets. This would have to be a glorious budget, a giveaway budget, a spectacular sunshining budget, and there's no indication that that's going to happen.
Well, that's because of the wreckage of the economy that the Conservatives have given us. When they pushed the economy off a cliff, it led to a run on pension funds, and people are paying more on their mortgage as a consequence. And let's be clear, whatever happens tomorrow, people will still be paying more in tax under the Conservatives. British people, working people, have had 25 tax rises under the Conservatives. I think it's something like £1,200 worse off under the Tories. So whatever happens tomorrow, the British people are still paying more in tax under the Conservatives, and yet the economy is stagnating, technical recession, in fact. I just think after 14 years of this decline, we need change, and people want change, and I think they want a party who's going to grow our economy, raise living standards and invest in our public services again.
Differentials, though, I mean, it feels as though the differentials are narrowing. I mean, we've even hearing the Conservatives possibly talking about pinching your non-dom policy, even though the IFS have come out and said what I've been saying for ages, that this would just force a lot of the wealthy to go somewhere else and spend their money elsewhere. But, you know, actually the only big difference between you and the Conservatives when it comes to the economy is private schools.
Well, let's actually see what happens. I mean, there is a difference, because we believe that taxes on working people are too high. I mean, Rishi Sunak's given working people the highest tax burden, I think, since the war. So whatever happens tomorrow, people are going to be paying more in tax under the Conservatives. But there is a different approach. We're going to grow the economy. We're going to create good jobs. We're actually going to get people back to work. Did you know there's over 800,000 young people, neither in employment, education or training? I think a life on benefits when you are young is no life at all. And we're going to introduce welfare reforms to get young people back to work. Work transforms people's horizons. I'm only here today because my mum and dad, working class people from Manchester, knew that work could completely transform their lives. And I want young people in this country to have the opportunity of a good, well-paid job. The Conservatives are not doing anything. They're relaxed about all these young people who are not in education or employment or training. We're going to do something about it. So I think there are fundamental differences. And I think when the election comes in May, and Rishi Sunak should name that date, I think people will see that there are differences and they'll say it is time for change.
But, you know, Jonathan, there's going to be a lot of people who come voting day, whenever it is, May or November, they'll worry about voting Labour because you say we'll pay more tax under the Conservatives, but they just believe that's what you stand for, more tax.
No, we stand for growing our economy, giving working people a good deal. So we're going to grow our economy. We're going to cut the cost of living because we're going to invest in renewable energy sources, which will cut people's energy bills for good. We're going to start fixing our NHS. All your viewers will know what it's like trying to get a GP appointment at the moment, or if they're waiting for an operation, whether it's a hernia or a hip operation, or a knee operation, waiting longer and longer and longer for these procedures. We're going to start rebuilding our National Health Service, because not only is that good for individuals, obviously, one of the reasons why we've got so many people out of work is because there's so many people who cannot work because they're on a waiting list, for, as I say, for a hip or a hernia or a valve operation. We've got to give people the treatment that they need so that people can get on with their lives again.
What about George Galloway? A lot of people will say a spectacular mess up by Labour in Rochdale. He's saying now that his new Workers' Party could be fielding 90 candidates in this general election, whenever it might be. You might be right, it could be in the next few weeks. That's going to be a big threat to your far-left vote, isn't it?
Well, all kinds of parties put forward candidates in general elections, but fundamentally the next general election is a choice between the 14 years of the Conservatives and whether you want to wake up to 5 more years of Rishi Sunak and 5 more years of the Conservatives, or if you want to turn the page on that decline and have a party, a government who is going to start growing our economy again, raising living standards and start fixing our NHS. And in the end, it is a choice between the Conservatives or Labour, and voting for any other candidate in constituencies across the country is basically helping the Conservatives. And I think people after 14 years will want to turn the page on the Conservatives, and I think that's what we'll see in the general election.
Which is in May.
I've been saying that. I have been saying
It's
that.
in
I
May.
agree with you there.
And Rishi Sunak... There you go. Well, you know, you're often in agreement with me. I mean...
Won't go that far. Right, we've got to say goodbye to you. Thanks very much, Jonathan Ashworth, listening to that. And coming up at 9:30, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
I've got me fiver on a May election, but I
love this growing theory.
Yeah,
No way.
They've got too much
Earliest
to lose
November.
to wait till the autumn, I think. More migrant crossings.
Yeah,
This budget's not going to do anything to improve things. It's only going to get worse.
But it's literally a busted flush if they go in May, so they might as well hold out and think that Keir Starmer just does something. They've just got to wait for him to trip up in some spectacular...
Well, except they just have more and more by-elections. People keep more making embarrassing mistakes.
Yes, they
Just get
do.
on with it.
Talking of embarrassing mistakes,
Yes.
we're talking about Gary
Goldsmith
going into the Big Brother house.
My goodness, Andrew.
Kate Middleton's uncle. He is going to be an embarrassment from the beginning to end, isn't he?
He wasn't an embarrassment last night. I can't lie, I watched him. I've not watched Big Brother for years. I watched the whole thing last night.
Maybe he's going to be very supportive of them.
I think he is.
But did you know that the uncle of our future Queen was a wife-beater? Convicted wife-beater.
Yes, I did know that. I did know that.
And that
But
was
that's okay.
wife number 4.
No, not that's okay, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
just
okay. But what I mean is he's served his time, he's had his punishment, he's getting on with his life.
And don't forget the cocaine in the house in
Oh, yeah,
Ibiza.
and the drunk abuse and the...
Yeah.
Is it Villa Bang Bang?
Yeah, Villa Bang Bang. Tells you a lot about him. He's quite a character. He's going to be very entertaining, I think.
Yeah, he was very kind last night. He was very, very diplomatic last night in the programme. Anyway, we're talking partly we're going to be talking about that. And also, of course...
Kate, the photo.
Yeah.
That we're not showing.
Quite right.
This TV station isn't, my newspaper isn't.
Quite right.
There's a voluntary agreement. She's recovering from a serious illness, so that picture's not going to be published, but it's all over social media and it's on foreign media outlets.
You'll know this as a former royal correspondent and just general man in the know. Is it correct that Gary Goldsmith actually bankrolled Kate when she was in Waity Kate period, that she was, hard up waiting for Prince William to...
I think that's what Gary would have you believe. I think Mr and Mrs Middleton have never been short of a bob or two.
True.
What channel's it on, Bev?
I think it's ITV, now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it me and ITV? Is it ITV?
Yeah, it was really quite entertaining. It's quite nostalgic watching Big Brother.
I'm impressed you got to stay up so late.
Well, I was packing for Whitehaven. I'm off to Whitehaven this afternoon. I'm going to be there tomorrow for the budget day. While
Where
Andrew
is
in
Whitehaven?
Westminster. Cumbria, just northwest of Penrith, on the coast from the Lake District.
We're finding the most northerly part of England we can send her to.
Yeah. Andrew said, can you just send her about 5 or 6 hours away?
Yeah.
Have a good one, Bev.
It's a return ticket, though, sadly.
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to a break.
You too.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. Great British giveaway competition.
And
It's
it's not
absolutely superb. If you're not in, you can't win. Have a go.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats tickets and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Right, still to come. The Prince of Wales' uncle is making waves, isn't he? It's got us all talking this morning. Gary Goldsmith. Will he be letting all the secrets out? We'll be discussing that with Cameron Walker next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say that, will they?
Because
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
We're just going to end the programme today with a lot of royal news now in the company of our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. And this, I suppose, it has a bit of showbiz as well because the Big Brother house have been talking about Kate, the Princess of Wales's uncle, in this. But first of all, let's talk about her. Pictures appeared yesterday which seemed to be good.
Well, good and bad, I suppose. They were unauthorised paparazzi photographs. I'm getting the sense that Kensington Palace is quite upset that the princess's privacy was invaded in that fashion, but the photographs published in a US gossip magazine appear to show her in the passenger seat of a car near Windsor Castle. Carol Middleton, her mother, is driving the car. The report is that the photographs were taken just after 9 o'clock on the way back from the school run, but it does appear to show the Princess of Wales wearing sunglasses and clearly well enough to be in the car. So perhaps slightly positive, but clearly very big invasion of their privacy.
We're all glad to hear that she's capable of being out and about. She seem to look well in these, so it puts a lot of people's minds at ease, I would have thought.
Yes, it certainly does, and us as the UK media organisation will not be running these photographs, but the problem with Kensington Palace is that on social media and everywhere else, they are everywhere, so they can't really control that photograph getting out. But I suppose in terms of all the speculation, of course, we've had over the last few weeks with hashtag Where is Kate Middleton, all these very unfounded conspiracy theories springing up online, it does provide that unofficial, unauthorised message of reassurance that the Princess appears to be recovering well.
Cameron, while she is recovering from whatever it is that she's been through, how do you think the Middletons, Kensington Palace, the royal family are feeling about Gary Goldsmith's participation in Celebrity Big Brother?
I think very uncomfortable, to be honest. The timing is just could not be worse. Gary did an interview with The Sun, which was published this morning, where he says, and I quote, "The last thing I'm going to do is bring any stress to them," as in the Middletons and the Princess of Wales.
Good.
Well, him being there in itself is bringing stress, no?
I would argue that, but from what he was saying yesterday in his perhaps slightly cringe-worthy promotional interview on ITV's Celebrity Big Brother last night, and what he said, it was the royals are not celebrities, and clearly he is also not a celebrity. The reason he's in there is because he is the uncle of the future Queen of the United Kingdom. But what he was doing was really singing the praises of Kate, defending her from the accusation of racism in Omid Scobie's Endgame book, or the Dutch translation.
Harry, really.
And very, very anti-Harry and Meghan. He says
you haven't told me anything bad so far. You see, I think this is all good so far.
I think Kensington Palace does not want noise created, and they don't want this constant melodrama of Harry and Meghan cycling over and over again. And I think from their perspective, they would see it as Gary Goldsmith. Whatever his intentions are, they may well be good, but it could just be adding fuel to the fire. And as you say, Eamonn, it's been a very tricky few months for the royal family, particularly with the Princess of Wales and all the allegations around that, and what she got, which clearly we're not going to go into, but there's just lots of mystery. And I think Gary being in there, they're worried, but perhaps he'll say something.
What did he say specifically about the racism allegations?
So, I can't say because I cannot say it on breakfast television.
OK.
But he said it's absolute, and a word I will not repeat. He also said that Kate is 100% not racist, neither is Carol. My family is not racist, and for Kate to be portrayed as that is just so far removed from the truth, it's ridiculous.
And who was
so
he
he
saying
was very
to?
strong. He was saying that to the journalist at The Sun, who gave an interview before he went into the Big Brother house.
And tell me, this man Goldsmith, he's an upstanding character? How does his character weigh up under examination?
Let's say, the positive first. He was a very successful businessman. He launched a company which made around £30 million. Kate was a bridesmaid at his first wedding in 1991.
There's been a few weddings.
There's been 4 weddings. Now onto the controversy. In 2009, he was caught with cocaine and a sex worker in Ibiza, and he also was found guilty of hitting his 4th wife, Julianne, in a drunken row a little bit later on. So he has been marred with controversy. He's put all that behind him. He's been to alcoholic rehab as well, and clearly what he was saying in the promotional interview last night was effectively, I want people to see the real Gary, and I am a nice, normal guy.
I can see where the concerns come from now.
Yes, he's been described as the black sheep of the Middleton family. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Oh dear. Well, it'll be good television, if not good for the future of the monarchy. Cameron, always a pleasure, never a chore.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that was good. That was a busy morning. Thank you very much indeed for your company, whatever time you've been with us today. We'll be back tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. to do it all again. You have yourselves a very good day, whatever you're doing.
Up next, it's Andrew and Bev.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. A bright start to the day for many of us, and we'll see plenty of sunny spells through the day, except for the Far East, where it will stay cloudy with some showery rain. In fact, it is a grey and damp start for eastern England and eastern Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain will continue into the afternoon, but they'll edge increasingly into the North Sea, with brighter skies developing, certainly for parts of northern England. Some showery rain pushing through Northern Ireland into western Scotland later, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but actually across central and western parts, that's where the best of any sunny spells will be, and temperatures will reach 11, 12, perhaps 13 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in the south in the spring sunshine, colder further north and northeast. Into the evening, we'll see those clear skies become extensive across Northern Ireland, West Scotland, Wales, Western and Southwestern England, and as a result, frost will form in many places. A chilly start to Wednesday, but cloudier conditions will prevail in the east, and further showers will edge back in from the North Sea into parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England. So some rain about first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine for western Scotland, western England and Wales, as well as Northern Ireland. Clouding over for Northern Ireland later, brisk breeze here. Otherwise, plenty of fine weather in the west, 1 or 2 showers in the far southwest. And the cloudiest skies will remain in the east, where it will feel a bit colder with a wind from the North Sea, milder further west.
Yes. Well, gossiping. To be honest, it's a show that has a lot of gossip in it today. We're talking about Kate Middleton to the Princess of Wales, her uncle being the Big Brother house. What does that mean for the royal family?
And the photograph, Kate Middleton on the school run with her mother. No media outlet in Britain is going to publish it because she's recovering from a difficult illness. But you may think you should be able to see it. If you want to see it, it's on social media.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Mail on Sunday, and the University of Buckingham is calling out wokery at the University of Cambridge. So I guess the culture wars must be almost over then, Josh.
Almost, yeah. Cambridge University discriminating against rich, white, privileged, privately educated men, claims...
The worst
which
kind.
is basically me. Claims Vice-Chancellor of rival institution, which is launching a degree course on the rise of woke culture. Now, I 100% agree with this. I applied to get into Cambridge, and I didn't get in because I was too thick.
Oh, wow, so it wasn't the DEI mafia?
No, unfortunately, it was pre-DEI. So it's like a double insult now.
Were you one of those guys who was like had a B, or was a B average? You know, you look like you should be an A because you act like an A.
I act like an A.
You act
I've
like
got
an
glasses.
A. Yeah,
they're fake. I don't even have to. They don't even have lenses.
Lewis, do you think that this is a little bit cynical? Because I looked up this University of Buckingham, and they opened in 1973, and their tagline on the internet is the home of the 2-year degree. They're trying to bring down Cambridge University with this.
Well, why not pick the biggest? I mean, that's why we should be attacking the BBC 24/7 on this thing.
I thought we were.
We aren't. We don't mention it enough.
Listen.
What I found shocking about this story is Buckingham is the country's oldest private university, and was founded in 1976. Something is wrong there. What do you think? Was Oxford founded by the government? I don't think it was. Was Cambridge?
No, absolutely not. I looked up Cambridge was 1209.
Yes, exactly.
So you can
it
get...
wasn't a government
But this is
grant.
actually quite scary. They can do a course on the origins of the woke movement. I'm just saying, someone's going to have a degree, and our job is going to be under threat. They're going to know much more than us.
Never.
Good morning, 9:30 on Tuesday, the 5th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. So Prince Kate has apparently been spotted for the first time since her surgery alongside her mother, Kate Middleton. But we can't show you the photo. We'll explain why in just a moment.
Smith, the uncle to the future Queen of our country, Catherine Middleton, the current Princess of Wales. She is.
Well, that was, if you're listening on the radio, Celebrity Big Brother kicking off last night. That was the uncle of the Princess of Wales, Gary...
Goldsmith.
Has he spilled any royal secrets? Well, we'll have the latest.
And George Galloway was sworn in as an MP yesterday, declaring that he'll overturn Labour's Angela Rayner's majority in Ashton-under-Lyne. The Workers' Party of Britain leader also said this about the upcoming election.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims and will be about the taking away of civil liberties in this country.
Always controversial. Labour Shadow Culture Secretary, she says the patriotic anthem Rule Britannia alienates many Britons. Is it outdated or does it fill you with pride?